Council Carr, can we do an audio check?
Yes, Rosemary, that's
Great.
fine.
Sounds good. Thank you.
There is a problem, however, with my screen. How just said somebody's doing some work on it, and uh, so I don't have a screen to manage right now.
Okay. I will do.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Standing Committee on Policy and Strategic Priorities back to order, and remind Council that we have completed the speakers list for item 4. So we now move into any discussion on the motion that has been moved. And I see we do have Councillor Hardwick on the queue. Councillor Hardwick, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to move my motion with the strike and replace that was provided to the clerk previously.
You have moved your motion, so you are moving an amendment.
Okay, then I'm moving a strike and replace amendment to my motion.
And Councillor Carr, I'm going to call up. I'm going to ask for you to rule on this one through the rationale that I sent to you earlier. That the process by which this amendment is being brought forward should be ruled out of order because the sections I outlined before is that by regular council procedure, councillors are only able to move the original text of their motions when we come to council meetings. That's because the public, that gives the public time to digest and comment on this. And so the way this is being done violates the spirit of how we're supposed to inform the public and include them in the debate. Yeah. So that's section 9.3.
Excuse me, no, Councillor Hardwick, I am being asked to rule. It's not, you do not have the floor. It is the mayor that has the floor right now and speaking to me on asking for a ruling. And when he's finished, I will rule.
I am finished. Thanks very much. And I did send you an email with outlining my argument. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I did receive that. In terms of the section 9.3 around the same item on the agenda, this is the same item. We heard speakers to the item as it was originally posted. I think we all understood that there was going to be a change being tabled, but the item that we have had in the public realm and speakers spoke to was the item that was on the agenda. And that we are dealing with that language now. It is the motion on the floor. There is no amendment yet to that motion. In terms of section 8.7.a, the good rule and governance of the city, I do understand that it is about public notice, and I do believe that there was notice given on that motion that is on the floor that speakers have spoken to. I sympathize with the point of view that a strike and replace where the information is forwarded to an intended strike and replace amendment where that is forwarded to the public, only certain members of the public, not all of the public, because what is on the public in the public domain via our website is the original motion. I'm cautioning councillors that is not good process, that we all go through amendments and changes to our motions, virtually everyone with this council, and some of them are extensive and some of them are minor. Few get through without any changes, but the process of doing those changes is in the public process of the council chamber with the tabled motion. So I'm cautioning councillors to do that in the future, and more than that, cautioning councillors to actually do the thorough review before you submit your motion so that the necessity for extensive changes is minimized. That's good process. However, we are dealing with a process that does not contravene at this point good rule and governance in terms of what the public has received, which is a motion. That motion being tabled, which has been done, and now we're in the process of debate and change. In ruling whether or not this is in order in terms of an extensive change, if the change in any way I thought would be contradictory to the original intent of the motion, I would rule that it is out of order. However, I have examined the language in both the original motion and in the motion that the amendment that has been circulated by Councillor Hardwick. And I find that the language in that is consistent with the intent, the subject matter, and what is called for in the motion. Specifically, the subject matter is that it deals with the Housing Vancouver strategy, and specifically with the data that underlines the Housing Vancouver strategy and projections. The use of that, how that data should be used or could be used in developing a strategy with policy initiatives, public access to such data, and in the end, recalibration of policies. All of those are the same in both the original motion and the motion that that has been circulated as a strike and replace amendment. So I'm going to rule that it is in order. Councillor Hardwick, go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate that, and I'd like to thank you very much for putting it up there. And you know, like all councillors, we do often take input from others, and in particular, this is work that has transpired since this motion was first posted, and I think just elaborates and makes it tangible and workable in positive ways. And if I were able to, and I don't know what if I can ask through you, Chair, through the city manager, if it would be possible to get confirmation from the Director of Planning, with whom I have consulted extensively on this, refining this motion and ensuring that the data that we're asking for is accessible and that it can be provided in a memo format by the end of July. So the timing and the content of the information that is asked for in this revised or amended motion is reflective of those understandings. It also suggests that we move, in A, that we move from the data then into a larger process around analysis and ultimately policy recalibration. B, we go into the details of the data. It was suggested that going back to 2000 was difficult, and so we adjusted that to 2010 and then listed the historical data that staff have confirmed is available, and additional current data and information that is also of interest. And then further, the small note in C that the Housing Vancouver targets are aspirational to achieve the right kind of supply of housing. There was no change at all in D. I eliminated the original E, and F is just asking for staff to report back via memo as opposed to full report with the requested information and as listed above for council consideration in July. And then with the hope that ultimately this data will be provided on the open data portal of the city. So that is my amendment.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, I'm going to move us to an amendment queue. So many of you have signed up on this, which is the main queue, but I'm moving to the amendment queue and you have to sign up again to be able to speak to this amendment. Councillor Boyle to the amendment.
Thank you, Chair Carr. And I'm going to save most of my time after I have had a chance to again review these amendments to speak to them, but wanted to say pretty quickly off the bat, and I appreciate that you also spoke to this, Chair, but how challenging I find this extensive amount of amendments to councillors' own motion. We have a process. The public, I think, deserves to be able to see what we're debating, and so just want to articulate really clearly that this doesn't feel like a good democratic process at all to me, and so while I will participate in catching up on all of these many amendments, I'm very frustrated that this is the process that we're going through on what I agree is, of course, an important topic, and would much rather have seen this motion withdrawn and resubmitted with the actual language the council is actually debating and voting on, so that the public has a fair chance and an equal chance to see the language and provide input, so that we really can be hearing from them and doing a good job in our role as elected leaders. That's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. And Councillor Swanson to the amendment.
I have an amendment to the amendment, which I submitted just now.
Okay, so you have submitted. I'm going to move us immediately to an amendment Q2, and you can introduce your amendment to the amendment, Councillor Swanson. I'll get you.
Well, I think it is important to get data, and it is important to refresh our housing strategy. I think when we got a report a few weeks ago from the housing guys, they said that. So for me, the most important information we need to get is information about income and whether or not the housing that is being built is actually serving and accessible to the people who need it the most. And then I also added in here accessibility data because there's evidence that seniors are going to be a huge proportion of our population coming into the future. So if we had information about whether or not new housing that's being built is accessible, that would probably be good too. So I just wanted to add in that request for information about household incomes and accessibility.
Point of order.
Yes, Councillor DiGenova.
Thanks so much. Madam Chair, I'm just looking and I'm going to ask you to rule on this amendment to the amendment because first of all, there's two parts to this. It asks for affordability and, you know, how much a household would need to earn to afford a unit. And when projects come before council, specifically projects come before council usually in rezonings. That's when they come to us as council. They might go to development permit board and the process there may be different, but I understand that every one of the reports that come back, a policy report from our staff already has that information in it. It already says that there are, you know, X number of units that do or do not meet our policies as to if they're 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedroom units. Not only that, it talks about the housing income limits or if they're rent geared to income or lower end of market. And it actually usually breaks down the specific projected rents. So for that reason, I would have to ask that you might consider ruling this out of order. Although Councillor Swanson, I agree with you that they should come forward, but I already see them come forward with every one of our projects that we consider a public hearing. Thank you.
Point of procedure.
I'm going to do a ruling first. I'll get to you next, Mr. Mayor. But in terms of the ruling, in my read of this amendment, it is consistent with the information that is being required or is being asked for in that list. If you read that original, sorry, we're now in an amendment. So the amended language, list of rezoning and development projects currently anticipated, the project status, the timeline, the form of development, the unit numbers and types of housing, and the ballpark breakdown of household incomes. I think Councillor DiGenova, you yourself stated that when we get the details on those kinds of proposals, that information is in there. I'm just seeing that it is being specified in terms of a request that it be reported on along with the other details. So I think that it is in order. Mr. Mayor, go ahead with your point of, I forget what it
was a procedure. I just wanted to confirm that when we raise points of order, that we're supposed to name the section of the procedural bylaw that we're actually asking to be ruled upon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You did a good job of that yourself. And Councillor DiGenova, you failed to do that. It's true.
Point of parliamentary procedure.
I'm just going to finish with this point of parliamentary procedure. Councillors, when you do raise points of order, point well taken by the mayor that please do specify the section of the procedure bylaw that you would like me to rule under on that point of order. Councillor DiGenova, what is your point of parliamentary procedure?
I believe I had, but I'm sorry if I didn't mention that it was section 8.7, subsection F. And
No, you
that was
didn't
for
mention that.
frivolous. So yes,
Yeah.
I had it in front of me, and my apologies. I was trying to expedite the process, but yes, happy to do that.
Thank you. Okay, so moving right along, Councillor Swanson, go ahead. Are you finished on your introducing your amendment to the amendment?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Then I'll move forward to Councillor Fry. Go ahead on the amendment to the amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and I'm very happy to support Councillor Swanson's amendment to the amendment, and if it needs a seconder, I would be happy to offer that as well. I think it's just a matter of good housekeeping to include this kind of information in any recalibration of a housing strategy, and I appreciate Councillor Swanson bringing that forward.
Yes, you do not need secondaries in committee, but thank you for that. Councillor Hardwick?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can. I can.
Thank you. I don't have a problem with the amendment from Councillor Swanson. Is it possible to do a point of information through the city manager to the director of planning just to confirm
No,
that
you can do a point of information through me to the city manager or another staff. But when members' motions are in place, other staff are not in the room, so it is to the city manager.
I thank you for that clarification. I'm just trying to confirm, and I believe it is, but I just would like confirmation that this is data that they can provide.
Mr. City Manager?
Yes, thanks. I believe, well, first, I guess what I'd say is the staff that would be doing this are doing other work that you've directed them to do. So, this is redeploying staff to do different work, and that obviously has an impact on our ability to deliver on the rent protections and the other things that you've already directed us to do. So I would just have to point that out. But beyond that, I do believe that we would be capable of finding, gathering this data.
The reason I asked the question is that I understood from the director. Am I still there?
Yes, you are.
The reason I asked the question was I understood from the director of planning that the other data that I had asked for was largely available without additional work. So that was the nature of my question. But I still am, and I think there's enough flexibility in the way that this is constructed that we can add additional data sets that help ultimately to inform our analysis and policy recalibration. So I will support Councillor Swanson's amendment.
Great. Okay, Council. I see no one else on the queue for this amendment to the amendment as put forward by Councillor Swanson. So, Madam Clerk, I wonder if you could take us to a vote on this amendment to the amendment. That is the red highlighted language put forward by Councillor Swanson. Councillor DiGenova, Councillor DiGenova, you have not yet voted. Do you need a vote assist?
No, I'm just bringing my voting panel up here.
Okay, that passes unanimously. There were 2 abstentions, but the rest were in favor. Thank you. And great. Back to the amendment queue now. Councillor Swanson, do you have any other points to make to the amended amendment?
No.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Bly. Councillor Bly, you may be muted. Councillor
Thank
Bly.
you very much. So
yeah,
we're speaking to the
amended amendment.
amended motion.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Just to point of clarification around process, since this is a strike and replace, are we now speaking to the entire motion or just the amendment itself? And we'll be speaking to the motion after.
We will speak to the motion afterwards. You're really speaking
to the amendment,
to the amendment, which is a lot of red language.
Okay.
Red highlight.
Okay. Well, I'll be supportive of this amendment, and I can appreciate some of the concerns around due process. However, I feel like we have during the last 18 months in council, so I'm sort of speaking more to process right now. We have experienced sort of full strike and replace motions. In fact, I have one coming after this motion, and that is to respond to feedback from various stakeholders or levels of government, I should say, so that the motion is actually able to be helpful and achieve what it's intended to achieve versus not. And I guess what I would say is that in these times where we are looking to be nimble, and we talk about these words of agility and responding to the current changing environment related to COVID-19. We do get feedback at different timings, but we have to follow a process by which we've got 2 weeks ahead of the council meeting to put the motion in so that staff can provide comments, and then a quick turnaround to then have the motion submitted. So I could go on and on. I won't. It's late. It's been a long 2 days, but I just think that we have to be careful that the content of this motion is not creating a bias around whether or not this process is out of step with the processes that we've followed for the last 18 months as a council. So I'm supportive of the process. I think the amendments improve the motion, and they reflect work that staff are also supportive of, and that's great. That means that council is working with staff to come to a place where we're going to be able to achieve clearer, more accurate data. And I will speak to the motion after briefly, but so I'm supportive of the amendments, and I'm also supportive of the process that's been taken to get here.
Okay, thank you so much, Councillor Bly. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, I'm just speaking to the general amendments, and I want to thank Councillor Hardwick for pivoting on this work. I expressed some of my disagreement with many of the principles that were expressed in the original motion, and Councillor Hardwick, to her credit, and not for the first time, took that away and constructively worked with some of that material and came back. And I appreciate the fact that she worked with Gil Kelly on a lot of this as well, and really came back with an agreeable package that I can get behind. And I also want to highlight the conversation that we had around the whereas as 6 about immigration and evidence regarding immigration, and we had a long back and forth about what that meant. And as an immigrant myself, and reflecting on how a lot of immigrants and people of color are nervous around what might be perceived as anti-immigration kind of rhetoric. And even though I know wholeheartedly that was not Councillor Hardwick's intention, that she recognized that it did, kind of resonate with the fear that a lot of people are experiencing as we see the kind of rhetoric south of the border about anti-immigration, and here in our own country even. It's a scary time for a lot of us who are lucky enough to be here but weren't born here, and sometimes feel like we might be outsiders. So I really want to thank Councillor Hardwick for hearing that and offering that amendment in the whereas as well. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Chair,
yes.
Sorry, Sadu, City Manager. Can I interject for a moment?
Sure.
Thanks. I was answering Councillor Hardwick's question earlier, and Law has since interjected and asked me to highlight that we are not able to provide information on inquiries. So the statement in this paragraph on preliminary applications, I think the way it's written, we aren't able to provide that information. That those are confidential inquiries typically, and so we're not able to provide information about those.
Great, that's very helpful information. I'm sure that somebody's going to take that up. I appreciate making sure that. Yeah, thank you for that. You're making sure that we are informed on that. So when I'll follow the speakers list now, but I'm going to be
point of parliamentary procedure.
Cognizant, just a second. Yeah, cognizant of the inability of staff to provide information in that particular language to fulfill that particular language. Councillor DiGenova, go ahead.
Thanks very much. I'm just wondering if that was pertinent to the previous amendment, to the amendment that we just considered.
If you would like my
I would like
analysis,
to know, I would like the city, through you, Chair Carr, I'm not asking a point of information. It's a point of parliamentary procedure as to exactly what portion of the motion Mr. Johnson is referencing when he speaks of law.
Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's in that in B, the further that it's highlighted on the screen right now, preliminary planning stage.
Great. Thank you. Yes, so it's not in the amendment that was just passed, Councillor DiGenova, which is data, as you probably know, that is in reports that we see at council, usually in public hearing, where it lists the income levels pertinent to the different unit types and sizes. So I will ask that councillors consider the information received just now from the city manager in terms of the inability, well, the difficulty of being able to vote on that, knowing that it's that language is not legally doable. Councillor Fry, are you okay at this point? You finished your statement?
Oh yeah, I am. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks for asking.
Okay. Councillor DiGenova.
Thanks so much. I hope you will bear with me as I experience technical issues on my phone and on my computer, but I was comforted to know that most of the organization is, as I called IT, and they actually have a voicemail about that on there prompting me and allowing me to leave a message. So I am going to try and email you, but I'm not sure if it's going to go through. And I'm going to ask the clerk to specifically, and I'm putting this in an email in the council amendments, but because I can't do both at the same time here and see that, Chair Carr, hoping a point of information through you to the city manager. So it would be to strike the information on inquiries, particularly, that's the correct portion that the law said could not be accommodated. Is that right?
Yes, it's in the further that in B.
And is it only specifically about the inquiries?
If you're looking at the language is it's a further that council directs staff to provide additional current data and information. A list of the rezoning and development projects currently anticipated that are in a preliminary planning stage. And then it does a lot more detail on that, the project status with estimated timelines, proposed form of development, unit types and numbers of housing, ballpark breakdown of household incomes required to afford each unit for each project, which is what we just voted on, but it's in that section.
Okay.
Chair Carr, this is Councillor Boyle. I have a point of order.
Yes, go ahead. Just a second. Have we completed have we answered your question, Councillor DiGenova?
Yeah, I'm just sending over the amendment right now.
All right, Councillor. Meanwhile, point of order, Councillor Boyle, go ahead.
I am hoping, based on the information that we just heard from law, if you can rule on whether this is in order based on 8.7F, that it is incorrect according to what law has told us we're actually able to collect this information.
Actually, I will rule on this. Thank you, Councillor Boyle, as asking me to rule on a point of order. It incorrect. In other words, section 8.7F would be ruling on whether it's dilatory, incorrect, frivolous, or rude. And I'm not sure if it's necessarily incorrect. I think that though that it does fall under A. It's not 8.7A, is not compatible with the purpose and objects of the Vancouver Charter, including good rule and government of the city. And so my understanding is that this is a legal opinion we've received saying that it is not according to the way we do business, that divulging information about a project which is um, uh, uh, anticipated in a preliminary planning stage, that it is not good governance to reveal that information. It is not our practice to do so. So I will rule that this particular whole section is out of order. Moving on, Councillor DeGenova, are you?
Point of
parliamentary
procedure. Point of parliamentary procedure.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Chair, I think that if something that's moved, and I just like you to, I'm not sure which where to look at for this ruling. I mean, perhaps the clerk can help, but I believe when one part of a motion is out of order, the entire motion is ruled out of order.
Point of parliamentary procedure.
No, I'm in the middle of mine. Thank you, Councillor DeGenova. So I would like clarification on that procedure, is that you don't just rule out one section of a amendment or a motion, you have to rule out the entire section, the entire motion.
I will confer with the city clerk on this. So if we can just take a short break, and it'll just take, I think, a couple of minutes.
Point of privilege.
I'm ruling on a point of order at this point, and you can come back to a point of privilege after I return.
That's fine. I'm stating it for the record, and you can come to me when it's my turn. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Council, I've gone through the motion, and I believe that there is only one section that has language specifically dealing with the inquiries or development inquiries. So the rest of the motion deals with other sets of data because it is a very discrete section that law has given us advice on. My ruling is that we can remove that discrete section and the rest of the motion is in order.
I'd like to
Councillor DeGenova. Yep.
Challenge the chair, Councillor Carr, if I can be on the list to do that.
Yes, you are free to.
Procedurally.
Yes, you can.
I'd like to challenge the chair on the basis that this morning we received a presentation from
Point of privilege
on development and permit process improvement. And in that presentation, we publicly reported out on rezoning inquiries and the amount of inquiries that are in the pipeline are coming in to the city that have been received on an annual basis. So I think that points to the fact that the city does, they may not provide specific identifiable data or private data around a specific inquiry, but we do report out in inquiries. And I think that shows an established practice because that information was provided publicly only this morning. So I'd like to challenge the ruling of the chair on that basis.
Okay, and there is a point of privilege which does take precedence. Go ahead. What is your point of privilege, Councillor DeGenova?
My point of privilege is I had a point of order. Before my point of privilege, before you braked, you came back. I expected that you would pick up there after making your ruling to Mayor Stewart, and I have a point of order.
Yes, and
point of parliamentary procedure as well, and then you took another point of order.
Excuse me, no, I did not take another point of order. Councillor DeGenova, I ruled on a matter, and a challenge of ruling should be dealt with immediately upon that ruling. So any other points of order, points of information, etc., are held at bay until the matter dealing with the point of order that I ruled on is completed, and I need to go through the process of dealing with the challenge to the chair on that point of order. Your
point of privilege.
Your point of privilege. What is the personal issue?
You had said, and I quote, Madam Chair, that you were going to rule on Mayor Stewart's and come back, and then pick up with mine.
Yes.
And I had a point of privilege on that, and that's what I said. I just wanted to make sure that you had heard that, and you said you would. So you came back. I was waiting for my point of order. Somebody else calls out point of order. So does that
no?
Okay,
There was not,
thank you.
Councillor DeGenova. Somebody else did not call a point of order. They called for a challenge of the chair on the ruling. That is a different issue, and it is related to the ruling I just made. We must proceed with the process related to my decision around the ruling on the point of order. When that is complete, I will go back to your point of order, but not until this matter is complete. To the challenge of the chair, you are challenging my ruling on whether this should be out of order.
If it helps the meeting to go more smoothly, since it's getting a bit fractious, I'm happy to withdraw that.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Yung. Councillor DeGenova, what is your point of order?
Chair Carr, actually, I'm not sure. Now, it's a point of parliamentary procedure. I'll withdraw my point of order. My point of parliamentary procedure is I was just called out for not mentioning the points in the specific point, my specific point of order. A challenge to the chair is section, I believe, it's a point of order. You don't just call out challenge the chair. You call out point of order, and that section is section 4 of the procedure bylaw. So the fact that that didn't need to be called out, the fact that Mayor Stewart, and I appreciate and I try my best to state the points of the procedure bylaw. I have them here in front of me. But even just in asking you to rule on that, he didn't state the point of the procedure bylaw, which would be, I would guess what he was going at was the good rule of government, which, I mean, it is there in the procedure bylaw. So do we have to call out the sections or not, Madam Chair? Because if I don't need to call them out, that's fine. But if the rules are the same for everyone, I'll work very, very hard to make sure I have every single section ready. Thank you.
Yes, and Councillor DeGenova, I'm just looking for challenge of the chair. I didn't believe it was a point of order. But
may I ask through you, point of parliamentary procedure to the clerk, when someone is to challenge the chair, do they state point of order first and have to state the subsection in the charter that challenges the chair?
Madam City Clerk,
Madam Chair.
Yes. Oh,
Councillor
yes,
Dominato, when you're done, I have a point of privilege.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm just going to thank you. I'm just conferring. I will confer with the clerk around a challenge of the chair, but yeah, let me just confer with her first. So just everybody hold on. It'll just be a few minutes. Thank you, Council. Councillor DeGenova, a point of order is not needed to raise a challenge to the chair. The challenge to the chair is its own section of the procedure bylaw, and at the time that a chair makes a ruling, any councillor may call a challenge to the chair. It is not a point of order. It's just a continuation of the process around a ruling around a point of order. I was correct. I would have come back to you on your point of order after that point of order and the challenge to it had been dealt with. Councillor Dominato, I believe you had a point of personal privilege.
Yes, Madam Chair. I've been having a bit of difficulty following the debate and discussion, and now I understand that Councillor Kirby-Yung has withdrawn her challenge to the chair. I'm wondering if you could just recap what your decision was with respect to Councillor Boyle's I think it was a point of order. I can't remember what it was right now with respect to yes. Councillor Swanson's clause in the motion.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if you could just recap what you had said, because I'm really having a hard time following where we had ended up there and what your ruling had been. If that
yes,
would be
there were a lot of points of order being called at various times then, so I understand the confusion. Councillor Boyle asked me to rule on whether or not the actual my ruling, which I had done on the particular section of the motion that dealt with the point that law had raised and that was stated to us through the city manager was not legally advisable, which is to divulge publicly information around inquiries. whether or not that meant that I should rule the whole of the motion out of order. And so I reviewed the whole of the motion, found that there was nothing in the rest of the motion that dealt specifically with the data dealing with inquiries except for that one section. So I ruled that based on the fact that it was just in one section that the egregious request for information according to law was egregious, was contained, I could rule specifically on that section, which I did, and left the rest of the motion in order. So we are not going to deal with that one section, which is in, I'm sorry, I can't see it on my computer. It's very tiny at this point. But
thank you. That was succinct and clear. That's what I was looking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we are back to a discussion of the motion as amended, which has been largely amended by Councillor Hardwick herself. Councillor DeGenova, you have the floor on this right now. Do you have any other points to make on this? You got
No, you know what? I can just withdraw the amendment at this point. I'm feeling that it doesn't matter what I do, that this is not going to work out, and in the interest of time and knowing we have speakers to other motions later, although none of them are mine, I'm gonna ask to withdraw my amendment at this point and to speak to the main motion, if that's possible, but I know that's unanimous consent, so I'd move to withdraw at this point.
okay. So withdrawal of an amendment. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to, just 1 second. I'm just going to confer with the clerk. 1 second. Great. Okay, Council, thank you. I just was verifying that that amendment had not been tabled. It had, it had not yet been tabled, so it isn't technically withdrawn. It's just not tabled. Thank you, Councillor DeGenova.
I'll just speak in support of. I'm not quite sure what just happened to me on the queue. I did not push any.
Yeah, you can continue speaking. I thought that you were done, but that's okay. You can
okay, I'll just put myself back on so you can put my timer on. I just wanted to thank Councillor Hardwick for the effort that she put into this motion. I admire that, and although we may not always see eye to eye on housing policy, the way I actually looked at this motion was maybe a recalibration is necessary. Maybe that is something that is necessary, and as I asked of the speakers, maybe this might, you know, I don't think that we should presuppose what this may turn up. However, I think that it could actually show us that we need to aim higher. Our targets, not our promises, our targets should be higher. And also looking at the specifics of those targets for lower income people, for people who, and I know that we already have data on this. Councillor Carr, you'll remember from last term we have data that was done, I believe, not only for the housing strategy, but also for affordable home ownership, that 70% of renters in the city of Vancouver would, if they could, being the operative word there, want to one day aspire to home ownership, but it was simply out of reach. We also learned that 30% of renters, I believe that was the number that I have here that I'm looking at, 30% of renters in certain areas in our city were actually overhoused because they just couldn't make it to that down payment. So then we'd look into affordable home ownership. We might not have been able to do it, but BC Housing's doing it. We're starting, I think we have 2 units in the city of Vancouver. That's at least we've started, okay, but maybe we'll get farther. But we need to look at our targets when it comes to co-housing. When it looks to the opportunities we have, not just to talk about the policy, but to actually see this move forward. So although I hate to go back and research it and study it, I actually think that the need could be greater. And I think that it could speak to a lot of the issues that, the mayor and I seem to, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but, that I agree with him on, that there is a need for employment lands and to give people an opportunity to live in the city of Vancouver that otherwise might not be able to. And that's what I heard you say, Mayor Stewart. And if I'm incorrect, I hope you'll call me out for that. But that being said, this asks for data. And Councillor Hardwick and I had a discussion, and I said, if that comes back and says that we need more housing than 72,000 units, are you willing to accept 74, 76, or 78,000? And she said to me that she firmly believes in data. So if that's what it's going to take for us to consider that, to other counselors talking about migration because of climate change, we talk about immigration going down, but there's other reasons that other people have talked about here, and I'm not going to make up numbers. Maybe we do need that information. I'm not suggesting that staff go and completely rejig everything they're doing, but I know that our staff already consider this data thoughtfully as they move forward. And for that reason, I support Councillor Hardwick's motion. And although, I think that it has, certainly in the media and on social media, gotten some blowback. That's what I'll call it, unless she's going to call me out for that. I've said to people, you could look at this many ways. And if you're
And you're out
asking
of
for the
time, Councillor
information,
DiGenova.
that's what I think that we should do. We should ask for the information. So I support Councillor Hardwick in this.
You are out of time, Councillor
Thanks.
DiGenova. That's great. Councillor Kirby-Young. You may be on mute.
Yeah, I was on mute. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so we're speaking to the main motion now, correct?
We are speaking to the amendment. This is an amendment that was put on the floor of council by Councillor Hardwick.
Okay, I will wait to speak to the main motion. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Weeb.
Yeah, I'd like to put a motion forward to refer this to the next standing committee meeting.
To a motion for referral. Okay. Yes, we can move to. Yeah, I think debate a referral. Just 1 second. I don't believe you need to send that in. I'm just going to check. Yeah. Hi, Council. Councillor Weeb, because we're in the middle of debating a motion, if you could send that as a referral motion and a motion to refer, and you should specify the date or the
Next standing committee meeting.
Okay, if you can you send that in?
Yeah.
Thank you. So meanwhile, I'm going to move us. Yes.
Councillor, may I just quickly ask a point of parliamentary procedure? This is Councillor Bly.
Yes.
I'm just curious. Are we? I feel. I just want to check and make sure. So what we're doing right now is we're debating this amendment to the motion. And is Councillor Weeb moving the amendment and the motion to the next meeting? Because we haven't actually adopted this amendment. So I'm just not clear what we would be moving exactly.
If that was passed at this time, it would be the original motion, and we'd have to start from scratch in terms of any amendments because the amendment.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification.
Chair Carr, can I just confirm for council?
Yes.
We would
Go ahead.
we would need to vote on the amendment first before the referral.
Okay.
That's what I was, okay, great.
Okay, well then, given that, Councillor Weeb, submit your referral, and I'm just going to proceed with the Q1 that we are in right now, which is the amendment Q that is the substantive amendment put forward by Councillor Hardwick. Councillor Weeb, do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, there's a couple components of it. I really like the idea of us moving this direction. I think it's great to get this information. Just some of the stuff about currently anticipated projects and some of the early planning stage components. I would like to get a little more information, and I think that it would have been nice with the complexity of some of these components to have gotten it earlier in the day. And gone through the process we currently go through, and recognizing that some of the public have also showed their concerns with not being able to see this, and some people being able to see this. So for me, referring it to the next meeting means that we can start working on it. Staff can really go into and start looking at what's available, what's can happen, and really do due process, which I think Councillor Hardwick's always been an advocate for. So I think process needs to be done. I think this is stuff we're all talking about looking forward and moving on. And I think we've seen that from the comments of councillors that this is obviously a direction that we all want to see. I just think I'm concerned with a couple components of it. I'm concerned with the process. And I also think that this is obviously the way it has come to the table has made this a strenuous process when we have a lot of people waiting and speakers waiting to speak on other motions. And I think that 2 weeks to get more information on this is fair for any councillor that wants to have information to make a decision on some really critical information and the data we want to make good decisions. And so for me to have the data to make good decisions on this is for it to be referred to the next meeting. So I will be supportive of the amendment, and then I will be moving for a referral.
Thank you, Councillor Weeb. Councillor Dominato to the amendment.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and appreciate we're speaking to the amendments moved by Councillor Hardwick, correct? Because I just heard Councillor Weeb speaking to the referral. So can you just confirm that?
He was, I think, yes, Councillor Dominato. He was speaking to the actual amendment. He was on the queue to do that and did direct comments to that. He also did indicate his intent to move a referral, but the process is that we have to vote on the amendment on the floor right now before any referral.
Point of parliamentary procedure.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. Yes, Councillor DeGenova.
Thanks
Point
so
of
much.
Parliamentary procedure.
Are you ready for me to?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I just thought maybe I interrupted. I was wondering, Chair Carr, if you'd indulge me by telling me, because I can't find it in the procedure bylaw, what there is to say that this can't be referred with the amendment. Councillor Weeb just spoke about wanting more information if we defeat something or vote for it. I mean, if we vote for it, it can be taken out. If it's defeated, I don't know about bringing it back. That's a whole other part of the procedure bylaw. Forgive me. I'm just wondering, is there a reason we couldn't refer this right now as it is and then get that information before voting on this amendment?
I believe that we are in the process of considering an amendment, so we have to deal with that matter because that is the matter on the floor. Then we
Could
can
you
deal.
check with the clerk for me if we could
check.
do a referral?
I did, and she was the one that advised me that we should finish this amendment.
So we cannot refer something over with an amendment on the floor. That's good to know. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dominato, are you?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to just speak briefly to the amendment on the floor. Appreciate the reconsideration and revisions that were made. They're clearly still in line with the original draft, and I think we've seen this on a number of occasions from a number of councillors where there's had to be amendments made on the floor. I want to comment to the fact that there's been a lot of questions raised and concerns raised about looking at the housing strategy. And Dr. Yan was really articulate in reflecting my experience with strategies is that they need refreshes. And and often when I was working on strategies, we didn't do 10-year strategies because the challenge is things can change so much in 10 years. So we tended to do 3 to 5 years, and even that in this day and age can be too long in many ways. But I think that um, one of the things what I did learn in strategy development is that you have a starting point with data, and over time the landscape can change. And with a solid strategy, of course, you want to set broad goals about what you want to achieve. You want to set the objectives of how you're going to get there, and you want to have metrics because you want to measure success. And you're going to have outputs out of the strategy, and you're going to have outcomes, and you really want to know, are you achieving those outcomes? And one of the ways you measure success is through performance indicators. And at the end of the day, um, policy work is always informed by data or research or evidence. There's lots of different ways of looking at it. There's qualitative data, there's quantitative data, and we can't dismiss qualitative data in these conversations because people's lived experience of housing is also important to a conversation. So I actually look forward to, and hopefully that will be, I'm not making amendments today, but I think when we look at data, and I appreciate that that's part of what this calls for, is more information, especially since times have changed. We're in a whole new world with the pandemic. I think we're going to continue to be in a whole new world. I really appreciate that, but I think we have to pay attention to both quantitative and qualitative data because that is part of modern research today. And but I do think that strategies are not static. They should not be. And I worked with a woman, and it was always we always talked about policies are great, but you got to translate policies into action. And so having a policy on the shelf or a strategy on the shelf, it is great and it helps guide our work and it's important. But you also want to translate things to action as well, and it needs to be informed. And we need to understand what our needs are. We need to know what the changes are in the landscape, both internally and externally around us. And so I appreciate that we're doing sort of an information gathering, which I feel like a bit of a data geek right now myself. But I ran because I was concerned about having the right supply of housing. And someone spoke about this earlier, Ms. Lomas, about the fact that she was watching her friends move away and couldn't afford to live in the city. They couldn't find the type of housing they were looking for. And that happened to my friends over and over. And they are living in Coquitlam now, and they are not living here yet. They're commuting back to Vancouver just to do their job. So, and it was so disheartening to see that they couldn't find, and they wanted things like row houses, townhouses. They weren't aspiring to a detached home, but there just wasn't enough supply of that type of housing in the market. So I'm quite passionate about this, and I think there's a lot of work to do in that area. I think we have some really great staff that are going to help us with that, but I appreciate the spirit of doing information gathering to inform our governing roles. And so I'm supportive of the amendments that Councillor Hardwick has proposed this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Dominato. Councillor Boyle.
Thanks, Chair. Through you, I'm hoping to ask a question of the city manager, which is, we heard earlier that the work laid out in this motion would pull staff away from other projects, and knowing our financial situation, knowing that we can't do everything all at once, I'm interested to hear more about what work might get delayed or postponed so that this work could get done.
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair. At this point, I don't, just like you, we just got this motion, the revised motion tonight. So at this point, I can't answer that. I don't have that information.
Okay.
We need to, we need to look at the work plan and see where the final motion is and kind of how it aligns, how the requests for information align with other work that we're already doing, and how much of it would be new work that we could adjust to adjusting other work plans. I'm not exactly sure at this point.
Okay. So I guess I will just, thank you for that answer, speak to the motion to say I, like everyone else on this council, support informed data-based decisions. I am not against us having the information. I am very concerned about all of the things we layer onto our staff. Um, and I guess what it comes down to for me, and I have been going back and forth on this amended version of this motion. I felt strongly against the first version of it, but much more neutral on the amended version. It comes down to, I guess, for me, that it feels very clear to me that what we need is more non-market housing. Those are the targets we're missing. We're missing housing for people who make less than 80,000. We're missing housing for people who make less than 50,000. It's not, I guess, you know, I don't feel like we need to redirect our staff to do a whole bunch of work to figure out those numbers if we when what I think we need to do is focus that staff work on figuring out how we get that housing built, and supporting all of the systems and processes that actually get it built. People can't live in the number of homes. People need to live in actual homes that we actually need to get built, that they can afford, and that's where I would like our staff work to be focused. Of course, having the right numbers is good, but this motion somehow both asks that we develop new targets and also that we affirm that those targets kind of don't matter that much anyway. And so I feel just, I will say, underwhelmed by the whole thing, when I would like to continue to see our staff focus on the kinds of priorities we heard them outline in their housing shift related to COVID, which is a really clear recognition that we need to figure out in partnership with the community housing sector and other levels of government, how we build more and more non-market community, co-op, public housing for incomes that people live on in Vancouver. And I'm out of time.
You are actually perfectly on time. Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Councillor Swanson. Councillor Swanson, you may be muted.
Yeah.
Go ahead. We can hear you. Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not really hot on the motion as it is now, because the amendment that I made that almost everyone voted for, which I thought was the best part, has been deleted. So I could go for referring it if we could think of a way to get that back in there. I'm kind of persuaded by Councillor Boyle saying what we need to do is just get the housing for people that have lower incomes. At the same time, I would really like a clear statement and a clear recognition in our housing strategy and actions that we really need to tackle. We really need more housing for homeless people. We really need more housing that people under 50K can afford. And I was hoping that the data we could get in this resolution would at least be the data to back that up. Anyway, if the referral happens, I'd go for that.
Thanks, Councillor Swanson. Councillor DiGenova. Councillor DiGenova, you may be muted.
Hi, I think that was is that a holdover, Chair Carr?
I'm not sure, but
I was just I had a point of information.
Go ahead.
A referral is indeed debatable, is it not?
It will be a motion, but it's not on the floor yet.
No worries. Just I had some ideas for the rest of the evening as well, just to be fair and equitable, as this motion was in the queue from last time around. So thanks very much for answering that point of information for me. If I may, I'd just like to state that I really do think that I don't want to lose this amendment. And, to Councillor Boyle's point, I really do believe in fair and open and transparent process and doing things in public council that's open and transparent. And I think that that's the best way to do things. I agree completely, Councillor Boyle. And I think that it's important that we lead by example in that way. And that's why, when sometimes we stumble along, it's okay to take a few minutes if I mean, instead of having the unintended consequences. And I'm not going to try and throw grenades and say that this or that is what I'm talking about, you know, because I'm sure we each have a motion that's moved forward that, you know, has hit some some hurdles, roadblocks that we hadn't anticipated. That being said, you know, I think that Councillor Hardwick has come forward with the best of intentions, and I, you know, hope that every single councillor would ask themselves the question: when we amend motions on the floor of council ourselves, we don't call notice to the public on those amendments, and because how could we? And if we were, then it would be a week here, a week there. I don't know. That might give the city manager a little more time to carry out some of this stuff. But I just wanted to state that because I think that there's a reason that we have this process. There's a reason that it's live streamed and people can, you know, tune into it. There's a reason we should, as Councillor Carr, you and I have both stated before, take these meetings out into the community when possible, or try and reach more people or engage them. But I just wanted to state that I think that, you know, this really is important to the process. Sometimes I try and hurry us through because I respect everyone's time and really do. You know, when I'm chairing a meeting, and I respect how hard it is as well to chair a meeting. So I just wanted to thank you, Madam Chair, because I know that this isn't easy for anyone, and do appreciate, you know, the mayor's points as well, because we've agreed to certain things. I know our last chair's meeting was cut short, but also, you know, looking forward to talking more about, you know, how to be fair and equitable about that stuff. I try and hold that up. So just wanted to talk for those comments. Thanks for allowing that.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Councillor DeGenova. And I must say, Council, it's very hard for all of us when we're in council meetings that last 13 hours over a day, over 2 days. But people's patience and goodwill towards each other is important when we're all tired. Councillor Hardwick.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'd like to be really clear about this motion. And I also want to just say to Councillor Swanson, my understanding is that your amendment is still in there and that the concern of, expressed from legal was in B, the fourth bullet under additional current data and information. And that should not impact Councillor Swanson's amendment. I'd like to make that clear. But before stopping, I'd just like to say that I did go through work with staff on this motion. I'm blindsided a bit on the legal side, but I'm willing, you know, as since that fourth bullet has been ruled out of order, I can live with that. Ultimately, this is a question of getting the data. I've already confirmed with staff that there is no extra work involved. They have the data, they can get us a memo. I'm not even asking for a full report. Subsequently, after we have the data, then the work will come in. And that work, as is said in Clause A, is going to be used as part of the recalibration, as part of the Vancouver Plan and the associated regional growth strategy. So the work, which is in the analysis and then the recalibration of policy, will follow. Right now, it's about the data. We have the data. We can have it done by the end of August, which is why I came up with that and changed it from my original request. So again, in summary, this is a data request. I have been told by staff that the data is available, that it can be made available in memo format by the end of July, and that subsequently the analysis and the policy work is going to be done anyway as part of the Vancouver Plan process. So suggesting that it's going to take extra work and extra time is inaccurate. Moreover, the data points that are put in here, yes, it's in red, but that's just because we've listed them out in bullet points. It's been established that the one point is out of order, which I acknowledge, which is the fourth bullet point. But my understanding is that Councillor Swanson's amendment is still in order as part of this motion, and I urge us to move forward with it. There is no reason to refer this. I have shared this. It's really a question of staff coming back with the data that they already have in a memo, which they've already, at least in conversation, agreed to do. So I urge you to pass this motion as amended, including Councillor Swanson's amendment, and let's get the data and let's move on with our evening.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. I'm going to move forward with Councillor Wee, but I have to say that that Councillor Swanson's amendment is not in this motion any longer because it was in the section of the motion that I ruled out of order.
Can you confirm that that is the fourth bullet point under additional current data and information?
I don't have that. I don't have the whole thing in front. Well, I can't quite read it. So I'm sorry, it's so tiny on my screen because of other screens.
The clerk should be able to provide Councillor Swanson's amendment.
It's not in here any longer, I don't believe.
Well, I'm sure that it's not far.
There it is. And the reason it's included in a section of the motion that had to do specifically with preliminary development and rezoning projects in a preliminary planning stage. It was not, her amendment could have, I guess, happened on some, to do with other kinds of data, but because it was specifically.
Could we not leave it alone?
No.
Could we not eliminate the preliminary planning stage as you've suggested and just leave her amendment in that bullet point?
Not at this point, because at this point that is being ruled out of order by myself, that whole section. Somebody would have to bring back to the floor of council an amendment to put that language back in without including preliminary planning stages or anticipated, because that is what law has said is not information we can publicly divulge.
Well, I am quite prepared to make that amendment because I'm quite prepared to take the part out that, as you've suggested, that is that law don't like. But I think we can keep Councillor Swanson's amendment in there, and move this forward. There's really no reason to delay.
You're out of time right now, Councillor Hardwick. I have two other people on the speakers list. If you want to forward an amendment to this amendment, which is your amendment, you are absolutely free to do that. But I'm going to, you are out of time, so I'm going to move on to Councillor Weave at this point.
Yeah, as this motion, if we pass it, will be a memo and will take no extra work from staff, and it's taking more time for us to debate because of the way this has been brought to the table. I will be voting in support and will not be bringing a referral because I think that our staff have more important components to be dealing with, and I think that data is important, and so I will be voting in support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weave. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Not at this time. I'll wait to vote on this one. Thank you. My question was answered that we could bring a subsequent amendment to Councillor Swanson's. Thank you.
Yes, that is true. That is true. At this point, though, we have no one left on the queue, so we can vote on the amendment. And the amendment is the language which is red highlighted, which was brought forward by Councillor Hardwick. Seeing no one else on the queue, I'm asking the clerk to bring us to a vote on the language, as I say, in red highlight. That was the amendment tabled by Councillor Hardwick. Mayor Stewart, Councillor Weave, Councillor Dominato, you have not yet voted. Mayor Stewart? Oh, got it. Okay, that has passed unanimously. There are 2 abstentions, but everyone else has been in favor. Great, so we are now back to the main queue. Councillor Hardwick, you last spoke, so you still have the floor on the main queue. If it is your intent to bring forward an amendment, you could take yourself off at this point. I'll advance Councillor Boyle, unless you have. I had heard your intent to table another amendment. Councillor Hardwick, you can. There's a lot
Yes,
of people to speak to this, so
I just trying to buy a little bit of time to get the amendment, but the intent is to reinsert Councillor Swanson's amendment. And
yes,
so
you have
just need a few
some.
minutes.
Okay, you have 5 other councillors on the list. If you just add yourself to the end.
Point of privilege.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor DiGenova.
Thanks so much. Maybe during my point of privilege, Councillor Hardwick will come together with this. But I was just wondering, I'm noting that it's 8:40. I wanted to let you know that I might not be able to stay past 10. Chair Carr. So that being said, and this would be you indulging me in a point of parliamentary procedure. Could you let me know if any speakers have withdrawn or how many items we have that have speakers to them? And is it possible to hear from speakers? Thanks.
I'm not sure if that was a point of parliamentary procedure or a point of personal privilege. I think that you raised both simultaneously, but we do have speakers. I don't know about who was withdrawn. The clerk may be able to give us this information. Following this item, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 more items. The next item has 5 speakers. The following item after that, item 6, has 8 speakers. Item 7 has 2 speakers. Item 8 has 3, and item 9 has 5.
Okay.
Which we are not likely to get to. In fact, I'm not quite sure how many more we'll get to tonight, but we do have a great number of people on the upcoming speakers list.
Just
Madam
a point
Clerk,
of parliamentary procedure on
just
that.
1 second. I just wanted to ask one more question on that. Madam Clerk, do we have any tracking on how many speakers are withdrawn, or do we only know that information when we get to that point on the agenda where they are on the speakers list?
Chair Carr, at this point, we don't know how many of them will be calling in. We do know that the speakers for the next item are on the queue, ready to speak.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay.
Point of parliamentary procedure.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor DiGenova.
I was just wondering, when would be the appropriate time in the procedure for the meeting to put forward a motion where I would ask council to consider hearing from all the speakers tonight, but maybe referring to date and decision on motions to whatever meeting you and the clerk thought was appropriate.
Well, you are free to do that at any time, Councillor DiGenova.
Well, I have to be on the queue though, so I go on the queue, right?
Yeah, you have
Sorry,
to go.
I just want to ask. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
Councillor Hardwick's done.
Councillor Hardwick, you are still on the queue. We just have had a number of points here. Are you still on the queue, and are you intending to speak at this point, or would you like to remove yourself and add yourself later? Councillor Hardwick?
Sorry, I've been trying to remove myself from the queue.
Fine, I can do that for you. No
Thank
problem. Councillor Swanson, you are up next.
I sent an amendment.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Swanson, that's great. I will. And where does that go, though? I'm sorry. I
think it was with B.
It's bullet point 4 of B in the second group under additional current and information. additional current data and information.
Okay, so I don't see it in, oh, there, okay. Okay, I'm moving us to an amendment queue. Councillor Swanson, I'll add you to that list. Oops. Actually, I didn't add you soon enough. Councillor Bly, you are up to speak to this amendment.
I'll put myself back on the queue after Councillor Swanson with the intent to simply call the question on this
Great,
amendment.
thank you. Thank you. Councillor Swanson, did you want
Yeah,
to?
I already spoke in favor of this. This is just to get rid of the part that made it out of order.
Great, thank you. Councillor Bly?
I'd like to call the question in, on the amendment.
Great. That's, I'm just going to ask for a yay and nay vote on this. All those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Oh, great. Then, Madam Clerk, if you could move us to an amendment queue on this amendment. I mean, sorry, a
Point of
vote on this
privilege
amendment.
about.
And would you like a vote assist, Councillor DeGenova?
No, I just wanted to make sure it was a vote, not another amendment
I
queue.
know.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Chair Carr.
Sorry. I must
sorry.
admit that I was that was a little brain fog there. Okay, that has passed unanimously. One abstention, but the rest, all 10 in favor. So thank you. Moving back to the queue. I am moving back us back to the main queue. Councillor Swanson, do you have anything else on the main queue?
Just I would support this motion now. I think it's important for us to get this info. I believe what Councillor Hardwick said about staff saying it wouldn't be a huge deal. And I hope we can get it and move forward with actually trying to build the right supply and not so much expensive housing.
Thanks, Councillor Swanson. Councillor Dominato. Councillor Dominato, you may be muted.
Sorry, I'm sure that was a holdover.
Okay, no problem. Councillor Bly. And you may be muted, Councillor Bly.
I don't have further comments on this motion after hearing Councillor Weeb's withdrawal of the referral. I hate to be so bold, but I wonder if we ought to just be calling the question to get to move ahead on this item. We've been debating it for about 2.5 hours. I can't imagine. So I'd like to call the question.
Okay, the question has been called. Councillors, I'm going to again ask for yeas and nays. All those in favor of
Yay.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. Okay, the question has been called. Madam Clerk, if you could move us to a vote, and this would be on the amended version of the motion.
Yeah, Jack.
Mayor Stewart, councillors, if you could mute yourselves. Mayor Stewart, Councillor Boyle, oh, that's done. Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Kirby-Young, I know you've had the need for a vote assist. Please let us know if that's the case.
Oh, sorry, is it not working? My apologies. Is that fine now, Councillor Carr?
You are fine, thank you. You have voted. Mayor
Thank you.
Stewart, I didn't see Mayor Stewart, sorry. Mayor Stewart, you have not yet voted. Mayor, the votes all disappeared, Madam Clerk. Okay.
Sorry,
I'm
Chair Carr,
sorry.
that was my error in pushing the wrong button. I was trying to get a hold of the mayor. So apologies that the council will have to vote again.
Okay, so
Mayor Stewart, are you on the line?
he has voted actually.
I see him now.
I am sorry about that.
Councillor DiGenova, Councillor Dominato, Councillors Kirby Young, you haven't voted.
I had voted. Do you have my vote?
And now I have,
Okay.
and
I had voted as
that's it.
well.
Yes,
But I've voted again.
you just did. That's, yes,
Thank
we
you.
all did twice. And that has passed unanimously. There are 2 abstentions, but it is a unanimous vote. Wow. Okay, council. We are now completed that item, which is item 4. And we are moving on to item 5, which is enhancing COVID-19 revenue streams for smaller unlicensed restaurants and cafes via temporary liquor licensing, moved by Councillor Bly, seconded by Councillor Kirby Young. And we have 5 registered speakers to this motion. Our first speaker on the phone is a public body representative, Dr. Patty Daly, Chief Medical Officer, Vancouver Coastal Health.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mayor and Council. The COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on the mental health of Canadians, as we know, including feelings of stress, loneliness, and isolation. And as a result, evidence shows that 25% of Canadian adults are now drinking more alcohol, which is particularly concerning here in BC, where we have the highest per capita alcohol consumption rate in Canada, 15% higher than the Canadian average, and a significant binge drinking culture. Public health leaders in BC have identified this increase in alcohol consumption as one of the most serious negative unintended consequences of the COVID pandemic response. Also, alcohol has recently passed tobacco and other drug overdoses as the most common cause of preventable hospitalizations in the province. In fact, BC ranks number 1 among Canadian provinces in its rate of hospitalization for alcohol misuse, nearly 50% higher than the Canadian rate. The availability of alcohol is the single most important risk factor for alcohol-related harm. And unfortunately, as BC has expanded access to alcohol with the recent modernization of its liquor laws, consumption has increased faster here than in other provinces. Research from the University of Victoria indicates there is a direct correlation between the number of retail outlets selling alcohol and establishments serving alcohol and alcohol-related hospitalizations and deaths. And Vancouver data from the My Health, My Community survey found that those living further away from liquor stores and establishments with liquor licenses had 40 to 45% lower odds of binge drinking than those living closer. So we know from this data that any increase in density of establishments is likely to lead to an increase in binge drinking and associated harm. Now, the commitment of Vancouver City Council to the health and well-being of our citizens, particularly those most vulnerable, has meant that you have taken a more judicious approach to liquor reform than other places. But unfortunately, actually the 3 motions before Council today, B1, B2, and B3, while I know they were brought forward in the spirit of supporting the business sectors negatively impacted by COVID-19, will increase the number of businesses with liquor licenses and permit consumption of alcohol in many more public spaces. And these will result in more alcohol-related harms. And I'm particularly concerned about the impact these motions will have on our hospitals and healthcare facilities in Vancouver. Vancouver Coastal Health has begun the recovery phase of our healthcare facilities. We're starting to catch up on thousands of elective surgeries that were postponed, bring patients back to our emergency departments and ambulatory clinics, but we must maintain capacity for COVID-19 cases and ensure physical distancing for our patients and staff. And this is very challenging, particularly in emergency departments where we don't control the number of patients who require urgent care. And you may not realize this, but in Greater Vancouver, there are on average 4,400 emergency department visits every year just for alcohol intoxication, not including thousands more for other alcohol-related injuries and diseases. These visits are concentrated in the hours when establishments serve alcohol are open, and these are all preventable visits. So the last thing we want to do as we begin the delicate balance of recovery within our hospitals, and while we still will be seeing patients with suspected COVID-19, is to implement municipal policies that are going to increase preventable visits to our emergency departments. And I'm just imagining if an elderly parent or relative who has a stroke or heart attack needs to be seen in an emergency department, if it's crowded with patients, particularly those with alcohol intoxication who may not respect social distancing measures. So while I applaud the commitment of City Council to support local businesses in their recovery efforts, which I support as well, I urge Council not to pass motions that may adversely impact the single most important sector to our population as we proceed in our recovery and prepare for future cases of COVID-19, and that is our healthcare sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daly. You do have questions. Councillor DiGenova, you're first.
Thanks very much, and thanks for waiting, Dr. Daly. I'm sure you're having very long days right now, so thank you for making the time to speak with Council and speak to Council today. My question specifically is also around your listing statistics, and really appreciate the data and the information. But right now, as we're talking about this, and this motion is framed as we look towards recovery from COVID-19, but right now we're still in that. We're not sure quite what this is going to mean for, social distancing in the future. There's no immunization at this point in time. I wanted to ask you, do you think that contributes to stress? So in the best of times, these are the statistics that you're stating. But now, we do know that alcohol consumption, as you just said, is up during COVID specifically. But do you feel that sort of the stress and anxiety that may create or may cause that increase in drinking will continue to go up? Do you have any concerns if it's more readily or widely available, and specifically to this motion?
Yes, absolutely. That's my major concern, that we know, and we've been very worried about this from the start, that social isolation, the fear of COVID-19, the fact that people can't visit family is contributing to, and this is very recent research data, that we've seen a significant increase in consumption of alcohol.
Councillor DiGenova, were you going to continue?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I can't hear Dr. Daly at all. I was waiting for her answer, so sorry.
She did give an answer. Dr. Daly, maybe you could just speak more directly into your phone, but if you could repeat that for Councillor DiGenova, that would be good.
I think she may have been disconnected. Perhaps
This is the operator. Her line just dropped, in fact. Yeah.
Okay, and if you could tell us what the protocol is here, does she have to call back in, or do you call her?
Yes. No, she's gonna call back in. There is a line at the moment. We're just gonna check. It might be her.
Okay.
I think I was at I think my clock's been running a little bit over while we've been waiting there. Chair Carr, hope you'll indulge me a little bit for that answer.
Okay.
Thanks.
Point of privilege, Chair. It's Councillor Fry.
Yes, Councillor Fry. Do you recognize your voice? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that my VPN is going to run out in 23 minutes, which will boot me off the system. And I just wanted to highlight it for other councillors, because we have been on for a pretty long meeting, and the VPNs time out after 15 hours. So I just wanted to let everybody know and remind them that we may need to variously take breaks to reset our VPNs. Continue the meeting as necessary.
That's a good heads up, Councillor Fry. Perhaps, did you say 15 minutes?
Mine has 22 minutes remaining. The timeout after 15 hours.
Yes, I know. Yes, that's true.
So just highlighting that fact.
Thank you.
Just a point of parliamentary procedure.
Yes, go ahead.
So sorry, Chair Carr. Just while we're waiting for Dr. Daly here, I'm just noticing the previous vote, the voting results on Councillor Hardwick's motion were noted as 1B fees for temporary patios during COVID-19 recovery. So I just wanted to make sure that, I just thought you should know that. I'm not sure if that is a point of parliamentary procedure, but could that be corrected? Maybe that's a point of parliamentary.
Yes, I'll ask the clerk to look into that. Thank you for that information. And Madam City Clerk, if you can advise as to the status of getting Dr. Daly back on the line.
Okay, video's off.
Councillor Kirby-Young, you're not muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair Carr, we're going to give her a call now.
Okay.
Dr. Daly, your line is unmuted. You can go ahead.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you, Dr. Daly. We can hear you.
Oh, good. Sorry about that. I think I got dropped for some reason.
I'm sorry for that frustration. You were responding to Councillor DeGenova, and she is still, on the question queue to question you. So I'm going to ask her to continue with her questions. Go ahead, Councillor DeGenova.
Thanks so much. Dr. Daly, I was just wondering, I mean, for those who say this is just, allowing, a coffee shop or a small shop to increase their revenue, would you be concerned that people who maybe right now can't go to AA groups or Alcohol Anonymous group or places like that, if they're already having issues and they're looking to socially distance but be in a cafe setting or something like that, are they thinking that these places might be alcohol free and safe to attend if they have issues with alcoholism or alcohol? Or I mean, this was something that was actually brought to my attention after hearing from you in our briefing the other day, that there are groups that can no longer meet, and some of them meet online, but when trying to be out and about, the people try and refrain from being in places with liquor.
I think you're right. You're talking about social cues and seeing alcohol. And though we like to believe that when we increase licenses, that those who take advantage of this will consume in moderation, that's not what the data shows. The data shows that everyone consumes more alcohol, and those who live closer to these outlets are particularly affected, regardless of the nature of the outlet. And we will see an increase in harms. We will see greater numbers of problem drinkers, binge drinking, and more visits to hospitals. And as I mentioned, that's my real concern right now. Our hospitals are struggling to recover and to have a safe environment, particularly in emergency departments. We don't want to create any increased demand on those facilities.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you making the time to speak with us.
Thank you, Councillor DeGenova. You have many more questions, so I'm advancing Councillor Kirby-Young. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can I ask a clarifying question, Councillor Carr, for your direction? I know Dr. Daly is just speaking one time, but she's mentioned the three motions. So can we ask broad questions that relate to the three motions at this point?
Well, I would prefer you to speak to have specifically focus on this, but they are related. So if there's other information you ask about, I'm certain that I wouldn't call it out of order.
Okay, I'll do my best to try to stay within the lines. Thank you, Dr. Daly, for being here. Really appreciate it. And I hear your comments. It's quite staggering to hear the stats around BC. A lot of folks will say, well, what about all those folks that can do it responsibly? And when, it's great in Europe and other areas where, they have a glass of wine quite responsibly, and why can't we do that here? But is it correct that what I hear you saying is that unfortunately, we just don't have that same type of perceived culture here, that it's the reality is different, as it shows that?
Yeah. For example, people often compare us to Quebec, where they seem to have somewhat more liberal laws. Well, the hospitalization rates for alcohol are half of those of BC and Quebec. We just have a more binge drinking culture, and you can't, much as we would like to, and the majority of adults do consume alcohol, and the majority don't consume it in a problematic way, but we have a significant percentage of the population that does. We have a binge drinking culture, and we can't change that overnight, much as we would like to. So we do have to be very judicious how we expand access.
Okay, and speaking of judicious, so we do have these different motions, and I know one, for example, calls for a full and wide opening of all parks and beaches right away. But and while you would prefer to see any expansion of alcohol for all of the research and citation you've seen, would it be fair to say that at least the approach that the park board has already taken, the work they've already done, in a very thoughtful, slow pilot that can be informed by learning and adjustment, particularly looking at health harms done well in conjunction with VPD in a measured way would be a preferable approach?
Yes. So yes, we did support that when it previously came forward. I think you do need to pilot it. It would be very hard to put the genie back in the bottle if you open this up for all parks and beaches. Pilot it. And of course, we do want to support, as you say, that percentage of the population that would like access, to do it in a way where we can measure if there are harms, adjust before we make a broader decision.
Okay, in terms of alcohol generally, with all the work that's been done, I think to the kind of Herculean efforts by Dr. Bonnie Henry and yourself and our health professionals around trying to sort of support this culture and sort of way of being of this new normal and having people physical distance and all of that. Do you worry that some of that good work will be undone if people are encouraged to gather? And that they'll forget to physically distance and the groups will be larger than they're anticipating supposed to be or outside of their bubbles? Do you think that, particularly given those concerns at this moment in time with the pandemic?
Yes, so we do not want to undo all the really good work. It's not just public health. The people of Vancouver, the citizens, have really flattened the curve, but we've seen from other jurisdictions that when people, especially young people, return to gathering with alcohol, they do not then follow those social distancing recommendations, and there have been outbreaks of COVID-19. So this is a particular concern that alcohol might fuel this, because we know that people will be under the influence or less likely to follow those guidelines.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Daly. Appreciate your time. I think that's my time as well.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Dr. Daly, for joining us again. Appreciate your perspective. I certainly share some of your concerns. And I wanted to ask you, so we're dealing specifically with the motion today around the limited food service designation. I seem to recall you mentioned before, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, I want you to confirm this, is that if you had a preference of if we were to open up more opportunities to have alcoholic beverages, would it be in a space where you have people serving it right and it's a bit more controlled versus sort of open-ended, you take your beverages out to the beach? And do you have a preference one way or the other? I can't remember I thought you spoke on that the other day.
I think I was speaking about retail outlets, government controlled versus private, where we know that where there's better training in government liquor outlets, for example, they're less likely to sell alcohol to young people. Certainly there are benefits for the programs that train servers on observing people may have consumed too much alcohol. There are benefits, but even despite that, our data from the University of Victoria is that the number of seats for liquor consumption, the number of outlets that serve alcohol, as you increase those, even with all that training, you are going to increase harms. But I think your point is well taken that, and I think the Vancouver Police can speak to this, that in public places where there's no servers controlling the access to alcohol, they have significant concerns with that for the public consumption of alcohol. But even the increase in, although it's well-meaning, and by the way, I do support innovative ways of trying to help the retail sector get back up and running. So I think this was done in the spirit of doing that. The first motion, I do worry that even just that motion will lead to increased harm.
Okay. And then I thank you. I appreciate that. I was trying to get a sense because there's 3 of them. My second question is just speaking to the subject of pilots has come up. I think it was largely around centering on the context of beaches and things like that. And I think that's work that the park board is already looking at. But if there was a desire on the council, in particular around this motion, to look at something like this, what if there was some stipulation in the motion around pilot as well as cap on licenses? Because I appreciate what you're saying is the greater expansion, more access, and we already have a lot of places where you can go and enjoy a beverage or take one out or have it delivered now. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that in terms of both a pilot component as well as a cap on licenses.
Well, I think previously when council has looked at their modifying bylaws around liquor in Vancouver, they've kept to the goal of not increasing the number of seats, licenses seats for liquor consumption. They may move them around because there's some problem neighborhoods in Vancouver that we've talked about, the Granville Entertainment District, other neighborhoods, that not increase the total number of seats. Now I know, because I was listening to the previous motions, and I support this, all your motions, now that restaurants that may serve liquor have got to reduce the number of patrons, you're trying to find ways that they can get back up to their normal volumes, because it's otherwise not viable for them. And that includes people consuming alcohol. And I support that. So the patios, I think that's great, because I do want those businesses to survive. But when you start now giving other outlets liquor licenses, I don't know if we can anticipate what the impact of that might be in overall harm. That's what concerns me. This is not a pilot. This is, increasing the number of places where you can purchase alcohol. And given the data, which goes back many years, and much of it generated here in BC, about how closely linked increased access in the neighborhoods where you can purchase alcohol, whether it's in an outlet or for retail sales or elsewhere, is linked to to harmful drinking and alcohol-related illness and death. It concerns me. So I am concerned about the increase in licenses.
Okay, thank you. I'm probably out of time.
You are well out of
Yeah,
time.
thank
Yes.
you.
Thanks, Councillor Dominato. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for hanging around as late as you did, Dr. Daly. So I'm going to just sort of ask some general questions as well, anticipating that, your time is very valuable and appreciate you spending the time with us. I'm wondering if you're familiar with some of the research that suggests one of the big determinants of alcohol consumption and alcohol problems is the price of the alcohol.
Yeah.
So,
You're exactly
in theory, sorry? I'm sorry.
Yes, that's exactly right. That in fact, public health has advocated for a minimum price per standard drink as a way of reducing the harms associated with alcohol. There's very good research on that. You're correct. Right.
So so in theory, like more sort of premium valued establishment service, even with limited food service, if they were to sell alcohol at a higher price, it wouldn't necessarily be an incentive in the same capacity as going to a cheaply priced liquor store. Or determine at a population level, the lower the price. Unfortunately, as you probably know, with the reform of BC liquor laws, we now have cheaper alcohol in the province. Restaurants can have happy hours. They can reduce the price per drink. So in recent years, some of the data is very recent that we've seen an increase in consumption in BC that has in the last few years. Yes, if you would have to be replacing the existing outlets that may be serving cheaper liquor. If you're just adding more and more places where people can consume alcohol, it may be less harmful if it's priced at a higher price point per drink, but it's still going to increase harm just at a slower rate if you're not at the same time decreasing the number of outlets that may be serving more cheaply priced alcohol. Gotcha. Okay, that's helpful. As far as the sort of marrying the concept of COVID mitigation as well, when we look at the health risks of understanding that folks are going to drinking is a social activity and folks are going to want to get together and have drinks with each other and socialize, whether or not that's problem drinking or just social drinking. When we factor in the risks, are we better off with folks drinking in private homes or in the outdoors?
Yeah, that's challenging. We've consistently said that COVID-19 seems to be less transmissible in outdoor settings. Having said that, there have been some, if there's mass gatherings of people in outdoor settings in very close contact with one another, there haven't been any of those in our region that I can, but there have been in other places in North America. There have been outbreaks of COVID-19, but it definitely, I think the risk would be greater if people were gathering in large groups in indoor settings. With the increase in alcohol consumption that we've seen until now has been primarily people consuming alcohol in their homes because we haven't had many places, no places where you can go and sit down and have a drink. And the risk of COVID is less if you're indoors only with your own immediate family members. So it's a bit of a balance. It's yes, outdoors is safer than indoors in terms of people gathering together, but it's relative. I think if people are gathering in big groups outdoors and they're drinking a lot and they're not socially distancing, that would pose somewhat of a risk.
So perhaps if the province had given us more powers to enforce people having private parties indoors or something of that nature that weren't affecting physical distancing, that might mitigate some of those risks of drinking indoors.
Okay,
that's it. That is it for your time, Councillor Fry.
Oh.
3 minutes for questioning.
Oh, 3. Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes. I'm sorry, Councillor Weeb. You may be muted.
Yeah, thanks. Questions. First one is on the availability of alcohol. Something you bring up, Dr. Daly, a few times. I'm just wondering if delivery of alcohol, which we're seeing more prevalent in the city, is creating a concern for you comparative to having places in your neighborhood to get alcohol closer to home.
Well, I think overall, and I don't have the research data, that there is more consumption. People are reporting higher consumption. So clearly people are drinking more. Obviously retail outlets have remained open. That's because we, on the same side, we also take a harm reduction approach that people who are alcoholics, if we cut them off, that would be very harmful. So liquor outlets have remained open. People are still buying lots of alcohol. It may be delivered. And so there is more consumption occurring right now. That's important for people to realize.
Okay, and then on the consumption in space, when we've done the larger festivals in Vancouver, Dragon Boat Fest, and licensed the whole grounds instead of having these small gated beer gardens, we've had less police issues and less binge drinking. So do you not see that this could have the same effect if we expand the space that we're presenting alcohol in?
Yeah, I think it's going to, it would have to depend on the individual event, I think, it can range from one where there's not a lot of problem. It depends on the mix of the crowd, I think, attending as well. So it's hard to predict. The worst event, of course, in Vancouver was a city event. It was the Stanley Cup riots when a big screen was put up for the public to watch the Stanley Cup games. It was not intended to be alcohol, and we ended up with a massive riot fueled by alcohol in a public space. So it will depend on the crowd. I think each individual event is probably going to be different.
And do you think if it is licensed to drink in a public space that the police will have more ability to check for underage drinking?
Well, I think you need to talk to the police about that. I don't think they are, from what I've heard them, they're not in favor of permitting drinking in public spaces, parks or beaches. They already have significant problems with people consuming alcohol in those spaces when it's not permitted.
You don't think if it was monitored and there's certain areas that you could and couldn't, it could be better enforced?
Well, I do think that, I think you're getting to it depends on the nature of the event, the type of space. This is why the pilot in parks and beaches that would appeal to, designed to appeal to a certain segment of the population were better than an event where you might get a lot of young people who are at higher risk of binge drinking, for example.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Weeb. And finally, Councillor Swanson.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. First, do you see any inconsistency in saying that we need to restrict alcohol, but at the same time saying we need safe supply of drugs?
No, if we get back to our 4 pillars approach to all substance use, the 4 pillars are prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and enforcement. Harm reduction is the safe supply of drugs. It's why we kept alcohol outlets open so that people who are alcoholics wouldn't go into withdrawal. What we're talking about now is prevention. When it comes, whether it's opioids or whether it's alcohol, we in public health also want to prevent people from developing harms associated with these substances. So we're trying to prevent more people problem drinking, and that's access to alcohol is one of the ways we can do that. So it's a balance. If we have an alcoholic who we're putting in isolation because they have COVID, we will give them alcohol if they're an alcoholic so they don't go into withdrawal.
Okay, thanks. And the other one is we just passed these emergency motions to allow people, restaurants and stuff that already have liquor licenses to expand outside. But I'm thinking that we're not really giving them extra seats because they have to physically distance, so they'll still have less seats than they normally would. So if we allow establishments that don't sell booze now to sell it, could we be saying that we actually aren't increasing the number because the existing outlets have decreased their number because of physically distancing? Do you think this is, or is this just too contrived to justify it?
Well, I think what you're saying there, it's possible. I mean, I support existing outlets trying to get back to their normal level of patrons, like by going to patios, because their business model, they already serve alcohol, they've got licenses, they're allowed to do it. They're not going to survive if we don't allow that. And it may be true that they're not going to get back to the number of seats they had before. In which case, if you did give some of these smaller restaurants licenses overall, you may not increase the number, but I think you'd have to be very cautious as you did that. You'd have to be monitoring this if you approve the patios and as you thought about other places. So certainly there's some logic there. Yeah.
I know I used to sling beer and I got a lot of pressure from my boss to overserve. I think that's another factor.
Yeah.
That's
I
not
think,
a question though.
No, I think the industry has come a long way because they recognize they don't want to contribute to harms and they want to be responsible. But the bottom line is, despite that, we still are the #1 province for hospitalizations due to alcohol misuse in Canada. So it's our binge drinking culture. We can't change the nature of the population.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great. Oh, and yes, thank you so much. And you do have one more set of questions, Dr. Daly. Councillor Bly, go ahead. Councillor Bly, you're probably muted.
Oh, sorry, I was. Thank you very much. So Dr. Daly, thank you so much for being here. I just wanted to ask you one question as it pertains to a amendment that I plan to move. And so you would not necessarily have had a chance to take a look at it to reflect in your comments, but what it's asking staff to do is work with the provincial LCRB to balance and consider this motion in the best interest of small business as well as public health and all of the other, what I would imagine, filters that they went through in order to grant food primary restaurants and businesses the opportunity to sell liquor with takeout during this COVID pandemic. So I wonder if that gives you peace of mind. It's a piece of the motion that you may not have seen yet. I just wonder if you can comment.
Well, I would notice that the decision to allow them to sell alcohol, we're now in a situation where people are consuming more. So we've identified in public health that we're very concerned actually about the increase in alcohol consumption that has occurred over the last few weeks, and we've identified that as a negative consequence that we want to monitor. So if that filter were in place, the advice from public health might be don't do this. We're seeing increased drinking. We need to curtail this now.
Okay, it's okay. Thanks very much for your feedback, and thanks so much for waiting and speaking at this late hour.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Bly, and thank you so much, Dr. Daly. Indeed, I think we all very much appreciate your patience in hanging in there on the speaker's queue, and for all your work. Great. Our second speaker to this item is Deputy Chief Howard Chow.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and Chair Carr. Really, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I'm really, with motion 5, I have no problem with. Really what I'm speaking to is motion 6 and 7, I believe is what it is. So from a policing perspective, here's some of our concerns relative to the latter two motions is in terms of we're seeing the problems now whenever we have with alcohol surrounding fights, assaults, disturbances, noise complaints, underage drinking. If we were to open up again beaches and parks as well as public spaces, which are unregulated, uncontrolled, unmonitored, then you're going to have the issue surrounding impaired driving. I'll just throw out some numbers at you. just speaking fatal motor vehicle accidents where alcohol was involved in 2017 in BC, we had 65 fatalities. 2018, we had 51 fatalities, let alone the very serious motor vehicle accidents that take place where, unfortunately, they did not die. Also, whenever we have events or public drinking, we're going to get the complaints on urination. We got issues surrounding vulnerable people, vulnerable women. I know council and city staff supported Good Night Out, and the whole pretense of that is having volunteers out that are going to monitor and ensure those that have, in particular women who have had too much to drink in the entertainment district are monitored, because there are the predatory people that are out there that go and take advantage of those situations. When we have drinking in public spaces, which is unmonitored, you're not going to have that oversight. Some considerations that we've got, expect that we're going to get the public complaints because we get them now. I guess it's following the same reason as to why stadiums like Rogers Arena will have certain sections that you can't drink at, because when families go out with their kids, they don't want to be around it. So you're going to get complaints surrounding that. Overconsumption, I know one of the councillors talked about serving it right, and there will not be any mechanism to monitor that if we open up the drinking in that capacity. One of the areas that we noticed was the core city phenomenon, even when we had later bar closings on weekends. And this is something that will only increase with these latter two motions, and that's you're going to have the young people or other individuals that are going to be coming into the city and take advantage of our beaches and parks and public spaces to drink in, because they know they can't do it in their own areas. We're already seeing a challenge. So what I'm talking to you about is something that it's already a difficult challenge for us to manage, with complaints coming out of Olympic Village, with Habitat Island, in beaches and parks. Those are some of the things that we're already dealing with. And I'm sorry, I'm not keeping up with the PowerPoint. I believe we've also got some stats, Rosemary, so it'd be the third slide, if you could flip to that. And just to give you some numbers on this, so Beach Patrol in District 4, which is Southwest Vancouver, so it's just the South Beaches, for a 3-month period involving 8 officers, we had 6,000 liquor warnings in last year and issued 401 tickets. Intoxication in public places for 2019, we had 1,460 calls. That's about 4 a day. When we look at all calls where liquor's involved in public spaces, and this I'm talking about domestics or knife calls, singing too loudly, those sorts of things where we're called, we're dealing with about 6,667 last year, so about 18 calls a day. So we can expect those numbers are going to jump up significantly with this. And you know, like I think this is the issue, and I'm happy to answer any questions on this, is that when we're talking about opening it right up on public spaces, that's where, from a policing perspective, we're going to have issues with. And that's it. That's my presentation.
That's great. Well, you do, Chief Chow, you do have some questions. So, Councillor Bly, are you still on the list for that, or was that a holdover?
That is a holdover.
Okay, no problem. Councillor DeGenova, you go ahead.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Deputy Chief Chow, for joining us, especially at such a late hour. I know you're chatting. You're here to speak with us about all 3 of the motions, and you had mentioned concerns with 6 and 7, but also I just wondered, considering the ramifications that an establishment has in losing their liquor license, if there's a temporary liquor license granted just for COVID recovery, are there any concerns? And sorry to put you on the spot, or maybe if you want to think about it, let me know. I'm kind of wondering if if they were really in a hard spot, not trying to say it's the establishment, but a server were to sell at a coffee shop to someone without checking their ID, or they said they didn't have their ID, would the ramifications be the same as they would be per se for an establishment that really was a primary, had a primary liquor license and wouldn't be able to get their liquor license back afterwards? Do you think, moving forward so fast with something might actually see those kind of issues that maybe establishments might not understand or know about?
I mean, they may not know about all the rules and regulations because they're not used to dealing with selling liquor, but overall, the impact or the significance of non-compliance would be the same. And by and large, most restaurant owners, most liquor license premises are very well managed, well run. They're going to make sure their staff are well trained, and for those that aren't, either through bylaws or the Liquor Act, there's tools there to deal with it.
Okay, and I understand that. I'm wondering, because this motion, specifically 5 that we're on right now, looks to expedite that and maybe to give certain types of businesses that haven't had dealings in that before that opportunity. Do you have any concerns about expediting that without the proper education, training, and sort of oversight that goes into licensing new establishments?
Yeah, I mean, I suspect there's going to be some growing pains, and
that is not me. I'm still here.
Chief Chen. Madam Clerk?
Moderator, do we have the call drop? Is he still on the line?
I believe I was at 1:18 there.
Chair Carr, it's Mayor Stewart here. We do have a point of business that the clerk has informed us that we have to do quickly. So if we do drop some calls or take time or have to wait for a few seconds, we might be advised to do that before 10 o'clock. So yes. I'm ready to go anytime you are.
Okay, that's great. Maybe we should do that. We also need to make a decision about the remainder of our agenda. And Council, at the rate we're going, we have 21 more speakers after this to 5 items. And I'm going to suggest that we actually refer debate and decision on this item to a meeting that we have scheduled on June 2nd. We have from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. scheduled that day with one public hearing item around for that. But, we have to make that decision. And the mayor will move us towards that. But then to refer debate and to refer speakers, debate and decision for the other items, all to that June 2nd date. That is going to be my suggestion. But Mayor Stewart, while we're waiting to get Deputy Chief Chow back on the line, why don't you proceed with the decision that we have to make around the public hearing item?
Okay, sure thing. I think, Clerk, we'd have to recess for a second.
Yes, we need to recess the standing committee in order for you to reconvene the council portion.
Okay, great, thanks. So can I have a motion to recess for?
No, actually, I would, sorry, excuse me. I need to call the motion to recess, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Yes, so could I have a motion to recess this meeting to go into council meeting?
Motion to recess, Councillor DeGenova.
Great, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Great, thank you. Over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. We'll now reconvene in council to deal with the recommendations and actions so far from today's Standing Committee on Policy and Strategic Priority meetings. We need a motion to adopt the Standing Committee's recommendations from today. Can I have the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor DeGenova.
Second, Councillor Weed.
Councillor Weeb, second. We're going to do yays and nays. All in favor say yay.
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 Opposed say nay. We're moving on to unfinished business. Thank you. That's passed unanimously. We're on one item of unfinished business at the public hearing held on May 26, 2020. Council heard from speakers on referred debate and decision for rezoning 2776 Semlin Drive and 2025 East 12th Avenue as unfinished business to the council portion following the standing committee meeting today. Given the time, I'm suggesting we refer the debate and decision for this item as unfinished business to the council meeting to be held on June 9th, 2020.
So moved.
Thanks very much. A second.
Seconded, Councillor Bly.
Thank you. Yeas and nays. All in favor, yay.
Yay.
Yay. Yay.
Opposed, nay. Great. Thanks very much. That's passed. Now I need a motion to recess, please.
So moved.
Yes.
Thanks. Seconder, Councillor Fry, I think I heard. Seconder. All in favor, say yay.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, thanks very much. That's carried unanimously. Back to you, Councillor Carr.
Great. I'm happy
Councillor
to.
Carr?
Just a second. I'm happy to reconvene this standing committee on policy and strategic priorities.
Point of procedure?
Yes, Councillor DeGenova.
Would now be a good time, Councillor Carr, to move that we finish hearing from speakers on this item, item 5, and that would take us past 10 p.m. likely, and that's fine. I understand that to go past 10 p.m. As long as we don't make a decision, we don't need unanimous consent of council. And then we would refer these items to, I believe it was, you said the June 11th committee meeting, items 5, 6, and 7. Is that correct? Or any further items on this agenda?
Yes, just a second.
I'm happy to make that motion. I've just written it out. Sorry.
Yes, just a second. I'm happy. First of all, I'd like to confirm with the clerk. I've received information from the clerk that there is a council meeting on June 2nd.
June 2nd, then.
Sorry, I'm seeking confirmation from the clerk on that. It starts at 3 p.m. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that's correct, Chair Carr. It's Tuesday next week from 3 o'clock. We have a council reserve, so we could move the debate and decision for this current item and the rest of the items to that time slot.
Okay, that's the motion I'm looking for, Councillor DeGenova.
I'm happy to move that, and maybe I should include the language after we deal with the public hearing item, because I would assume that would come first.
Well, we don't know yet about that. I mean, it seems to me that was a June 11th date, not a June 2nd date.
So sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. Yes. So we're just, council, what we would be voting on now is to extend this meeting to continue to finish the hearing from speakers on this item, refer debate and decision to a council meeting on June 2nd, starting at 3 p.m., and to refer the hearing of speakers, debate and decision, and all the remaining items to that June 2nd meeting. We can do this by verbal vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
That was only one. We needed a 2/3 vote, so it passed. Great,
Point
thank
of
you.
parliamentary procedure.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Bly.
I just wonder when a councillor moves a motion, any motion, that there's an opportunity for debate.
If that's a good question. On the matters of extending the meeting, normally there's no debate, but I'm just going to confirm that with the clerk. Either it's just a vote, straight vote. Madam Clerk?
Chair Carr, yes, if council wishes to do debate on the motion, that's up to council. But in the past, I think if it's, sorry.
Point of parliamentary procedure.
Just a second. I'm dealing with the point of parliamentary procedure on the part of Councillor Bly, and apologies on that. I could have asked, and typically we don't ask, is there any debate on this? So that's something that I think as chairs we should all discuss, because it's not the normal procedure, but to hear that it is allowable makes me pause to reflect that we need to make sure we deal with it that way.
So if I may, I'm happy to continue. I just wanted to point out that that was missed, and I was going to amend the motion with a different option, but in the interest of time and being reasonable and trying to work with the group here, I'm going to just leave that as it is, but I would have preferred it dealt with a different way. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that information
Good
that you raised.
Point of privilege, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Scott, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Sky is fine. I actually did not vote on that because I thought there would be an opportunity to speak to it also. So I just wanted to note for the record, I did not vote. because
Great.
usually we do
Okay.
have a chance to speak to it.
Point of parliamentary
Yes. Okay.
procedure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that information, Councillor Kirby-Young. Go ahead, Councillor DiGenova.
I just wanted to check with you. The 2/3 vote is to, it's my understanding, to pass a motion to extend a meeting. But if one councillor even says, no, they can't stay past that time, speakers can be heard from, but there can be no debate and decision unless there's unanimous consent. That's my recollection. Could you please check with the clerk? Unless you're aware of that yourself, Chair Carr.
Yes,
My apologies.
I'm totally aware of it. For us to extend a meeting to continue with an item that includes debate and decision, it requires a unanimous vote. To extend the meeting in order to hear from speakers but not include debate and decision is a 2/3 vote.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm happy to reconsider the motion if someone else would like to do something different, and I'm even happy to sort of cede my privilege to vote. But I about 10 p.m. I probably should go and check on my daughter who's sleeping. So
we've heard
I just
from
want to note that. Thank you.
We've heard from two speakers on that, and one of whom said that they would like to have debate, but they are fine with us proceeding, and another who did not vote. But at the point that we did have a vote, it was only one voiced opposition.
May I ask Chair Carr, if it's not going to take too much time, that we actually just do a vote on screen very quickly to vote on that motion, since there seems to be some councillors that either were on mute, off mute, waiting to debate, and didn't vote.
Just one second. I have got a note from the clerk suggesting that we do have Deputy Chief Chow back on the line. I suppose we can. I heard one vote, and just one who didn't vote. That is what I heard. So I'm not sure what the objective is for you to ask for an online vote. We can do that, but it will take time. It is your privilege to ask.
I leave it to the discretion of the chair to move forward if that's what you want.
Yeah, I think at this point that there's been two voiced opposition, one of which didn't vote, so I'm not quite sure if it was actual opposition, but would have liked to have debated the issue. But we are past that. I think in the interest of time and the speakers we still have remaining on the line, I would like us to move on. We've made a decision. And I think all of you know what that decision is now. So we are going to be hearing from the rest of the speakers. And Deputy Chief Chow, are you there on the line?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
Yes,
you
I
have
am.
a number of, thank you very much for your patience, and thank you for getting back on the line. We have a number of councillors wishing to ask you questions. Councillor Genova, you have a little bit of time left, but not much.
But I think I lost about 20 seconds there. So I'm hoping I can be, I'll try and ask this question again as fast as possible.
You have 30 seconds then. Go ahead.
I have 30 extra seconds?
No, you have 30 more starting now.
Well, my timer is at a minute 43.
2:43.
Oh, mine shows a minute 43. I was just wondering if there were concerns that you had in operational increases in cost to the VPD for any of the three motions, and if so, what would those be? And if you can't tell me now, can you send that information or an estimate?
That part of it's going to require some speculation, but I can tell you that if we open it up to public spaces, beaches, parks, that there is going to be a significant demand on our resources. We see that every summer, even with beaches and parks anyways. But I can assure you that if we allow drinking in those areas, that it's going to be a drain on our resources.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so
You're
much,
welcome.
Councillor DiGenova. And we have other questions for you. Councillor Kirby-Young, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Deputy Chow. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it. Just picking up on the questions, I wonder if you can sort of speak to the train of thought and how you would respond to people that say, well, you know, the VPD may actually save time, because you had some stats when you shared that there were 6,000 liquor warnings, I think, over a 6-month period in District 4 on the west side, 401 tickets, and that time would be freed up. So I just want to be explicit in how you would respond to that perspective that is raised sometimes.
No, it's going to be, it will be a problem. You know, like, we're just scratching the surface. When I'm talking those 6,000 incidents where we're stopping people on the beaches that are drinking, I can tell you that's just scratching the surface. Generally, almost all of our calls that are relative to this are complaint driven. It's because people are fed up with the group that's getting rowdy, that have been drinking, that's causing problems. I know it's I don't know if it's the right word, but we tend to romanticize that it's nice, you know, for a couple that's down there and maybe they're having a glass of wine. I mean, that's really not our issue, our problem. Where our resources tend to be focused on are, you know, those that are intoxicated, those that are causing disturbances, those are getting in fights, assaults, that sort of thing. So it will be a drain. It's not going to be, it won't lessen our work.
Okay, and sort of another question is that Dr. Daly really spoke to the fact that we are, you know, I think you and I had a conversation, if I recall correctly, when I was on the Vancouver Park Board, about a measured approach and a pilot at that time, and that was, I think, a much more thoughtful, considered discussion in terms of gradual implementation, and that was pre-COVID, and now we're in very different times. And I think Dr. Daly spoke earlier to her particular concerns from a health perspective. I wonder if you can comment what you're seeing from the VPD, if you're seeing additional incidents related to alcohol or mental stressors, or the fact that there are additional pressures related to the police and calls that you're getting right now because we're at a time of COVID, before something like this might be added into the mix with opening up into larger public spaces.
And this is something that we've spoken publicly about to the media, in terms of over the last 3 months, we have seen certain spikes in most certainly different types of crimes, like B&Es, like violence on the streets, like strong armings, like robberies. And I can tell you that anecdotally, without having enough data in front of me here on this, but say anecdotally, our frontline officers are telling me day in, day out that they're seeing greater sense of hostility, the level of violence, you know, that not only amongst each other, but with our own officers. We've seen upwards of, for the first quarter, about a 60% increase on assaults on police officers. I'm hearing this as well from our health professionals, that they're seeing that level. So it could be a multitude of reasons, but I suspect that the stress and stressors related to COVID is probably adding to that.
Okay, so not that, if I can sum up, because I know limited time, so I'll sum up just by clarifying, not necessarily not open to some discussion around a measured approach, but concerned about timing and the fact that COVID is a really unique and stressful and demanding time. Is that fair to say?
That's right, and I remember speaking on this a number of years back as well. Is that it was, you know, I support a measured approach in terms of a pilot study where we're looking at the impacts before and after on the community, on the group, on the and on health and on us. And if it's something like that with enough constraints and oversight onto it, I think it's very viable.
Thank you.
Okay, and that is your time. And you still have more questions. Councillor Fry, go ahead.
Hi, Deputy Chief. Thanks for holding up for us here. You'd mentioned earlier that I think to Councillor Kirby-Young's questions, that you generally didn't have problems with, you know, the sort of couple having a glass of wine kind of idea. How do police actively engage with those folks then? Because I think that's where a lot of the confusion is, where generally law-abiding folks who just want to have a glass of wine in the park, or a beer while they're in the park, or, you know, what have you, they don't want to be lawbreakers, but at the same time, I see a lot of it. I also see a lot of like problem drinking as well that's out in public. And how do the police differentiate between those different drinking populations?
Yeah, like, I mean, most of our calls, just simply because there's no shortage of people drinking on the beaches and parks that we're dealing with in the summer months. And you can probably see by the numbers, it pretty much tells the story. Like if we're dealing with 6,000 incidents like that, and we're only issuing citations in about 400 of them, a small percentage. I'd say by and large, our officers have taken a very reasonable approach. They're exercising the discretion where it's necessary, but our resources, our time, our effort is typically spent on the troublemakers. Those are causing problems. Those are over intoxication, that sort of thing. So right. I'm not sure if I answered your question on that.
No, I think that kind of gets to it. Yeah, the focus is really the problem, folks, not the drinking per se, and the quote unquote air quotes breaking of the law by drinking in public. I'm sure you can appreciate that does create a challenge for folks who, are otherwise totally law abiding and don't want to see themselves as criminals per se or miscreants or what have you. Is it safe to say then that a lot of the problem drinking is really sort of found predominantly in normal times in our entertainment districts where there's a concentration of licensed liquor establishments like the Granville Entertainment District? What kind of proportion of call-outs in a normal context would you see coming from our entertainment districts?
No, that's a fair question, and I'd say that obviously there is a significant number of our issues in the Granville Entertainment District simply because of the density of people that are going out drinking. But I could say that our calls are throughout the city, where alcohol is an issue. At most parks, most open areas, wherever the complaints are going to draw us. So it's not really isolated to one area. And I don't know specifically the numbers, but I can tell you that we're down in the Granville Entertainment District simply because of the sheer numbers.
Right. And
that's
it.
I'm out of time. Thanks.
Yeah, you are. Thanks, Councillor Fry. Councillor Bly.
That is a holdover, Madam Chair.
Okay, Deputy Chief Chow, I think that's it for your questions, and I really do appreciate your patience with us and our process, and I very much appreciate your hanging in there right to the end. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you. You too. So we have next on the list, Paul Smith. I've got him noted as in person, so Clerk, I wonder if you could just verify.
Yes, our speaker is just making his way in. Thank you.
That's dedication. I'm sorry, Councillor Carr. I just had to. He's in chambers? Okay.
Yeah. The clerk will alert us.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
I don't really know how to say this because I just don't know if we can do it. It's a Cotemic Beach is what I want to change the name of English Bay to Cotemic Beach. And I want the Cotemic Beach Bar to be the place there instead of the Cactus Club. And I want this place to be like huge parties. I want it to be huge parties going on there right now. I think that's going to really rebuild the city really well. And yeah, like I make music and I'm willing to just like make music on that beach. And from that, I have a whole list here of things I want to do in the city. And it's going to completely change the city. It's going to turn into like a casino kind of place. And yeah, I got like statues here I want to like make all over the city. And I think rebuilding the city right now is the best thing to do to get us all back to work so we can forget about this coronavirus and we can, yeah, just pretty much get excited about the future. And because we need someone to be it, I'm the Prime Minister.
Mr. Smith, are you done? Are you
Yes, he's
finished?
done. He's left the
Right.
chamber.
Okay. He's left the chamber, so I don't think there's no counselors. Well, Councillor Weeb, you are on the list, but he's left the chambers. Do you wish to have someone bring him back in?
No, mine's a point of information. I'm just wondering, in the future, we'll have to get video of speakers in the chambers. Is it possible for us to get the video feed to include the chambers?
Madam Clerk, maybe that's something we could take away and come back to you on, Councillor Weeb.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Charles Gauthier.
And Mr. Gauthier will be speaking by phone.
Great.
Go ahead, Mr. Gauthier, your line is open.
Okay, thank you. I'm here to speak on actually two motions because they are related. Councillor Bly's motion, motion number 5, and item number 7, Councillors Fry and Weeb's motion. A lot of the comments I'll be making will be applying to both. So in favor of the motion number 5 specifically, that stakeholders such as BIs be consulted and that this be done urgently to assist smaller unlicensed restaurants and cafes that sell food. Councillor Bly's motion references the province's 2013 liquor policy review. We participated in that review and made a submission, and our policy position was grounded in the following principles: fairness, public safety, public health, smart regulations, and modernization. I'm not going to have a chance to read the full submission, but some of the key themes were as follows. Create an equal playing field for all involved in the industry and ban unfair competition generated by the liquor distribution branch. Cut red tape and streamline the approval and enforcement processes, resulting in less government duplication of efforts at the provincial and municipal levels. Reduce the amount of government interference in how a business in this industry is operated and let the marketplace decide what is successful and what is not. Public safety, enforcement, and public education efforts should be focused on the most egregious and harmful acts related to alcohol. For example, overcrowding, overservice of alcohol, service to minors, binge drinking, and chronic alcoholism. Introduce fines, penalties for those directly responsible for liquor law violations or public disturbance, rather than hammering the operators of liquor and food primary establishments. Introduce fines, penalties, or some other consequences for minors who are found in liquor primary establishments or attempt to enter into them. And lastly, invest tax revenues earned from liquor sales in public awareness and education programs, including redistributing a significant portion of these tax dollars to municipal police forces who are delegated the authority to enforce laws related to alcohol abuse and or public disturbances that stem from the same. And then we also participated in the city's liquor strategy review that occurred in 2016 and led into 2017. And I just would like to read some comments from that letter dated October 28, 2016. I know you don't have a copy of it, but we, in that letter, in that submission to the city, we indicated we support initiatives and strategies that will offer consumers more choice, enliven our public spaces, encourage and stimulate more live musical performances in venues, streamline the approval processes, and eliminate red tape. And many of you know that we did a reimagined Downtown Vancouver 2040 public engagement process where we had 11,000 participants share their vision for downtown. And in that document, the participants stated they would like to see relaxed liquor regulations with animated sidewalks and public plazas, encouraging increased public interaction and friendliness. Many told us that they envision new liquor laws that have resulted in a renaissance of unique restaurants, cafes, and microbreweries. And then just to finish off, in this letter to the city, dated late October 2016, we support 4 liquor strategy goals that the city had actually identified. Promote the associated benefits of liquor, such as generating economic activity, increase responsible choices, improve safety, health, well-being, and community fit, and ensure fairness. And with that, I'll close. I'm hoping I was able to make points on both of those motions. And lastly, on the motion that's on your agenda, number 7, we would like to explore and suggest that the front plaza of the Vancouver Art Gallery, the 800 Robson Plaza, and other yet to be identified locations within the DVBI district would be ideal locations to be selected for a pilot project. And I'll leave it at that.
That's great. You do have questions, Mr. Gauthier. So first, Councillor Bly. Go ahead, Councillor Bly.
Thank you very much, Chair Carr, and thank you, Mr. Gauthier, for sticking around and speaking here at 10 o'clock tonight. I appreciate your feedback and bringing that voice, that reasonable approach of sort of a balanced voice of reason. I wondered if you were familiar, since we're talking about policy, around the 2017 policy changes that affect businesses that serve and retail liquor. I'll just mention them: protect health, safety, and community livability, foster creativity, community connection, and local economy, and ensure regulatory framework is effective and efficient. Are you familiar with those goals outlined in the policy changes from 2017? You don't need to know them verbatim, but I'm just wondering if you're familiar.
No, but they sound relatively familiar and similar to what I just read out at the end of my presentation.
Yeah. Right. So I guess the question is, do you feel there are businesses under the membership of the downtown, the DVBIA, that would benefit from this type of policy direction, particularly at this time in a temporary, under temporary permitting?
I absolutely think that they would. I can only think of an example where I might have shared with you, Councillor Bly. Went to a place on Commercial Drive for dinner and walked in and thought that this place actually had the ability to sell alcohol with food, and they weren't able to. And it was a Saturday night, and I looked at my wife. We almost made the decision to leave because we couldn't have alcohol service. And we're responsible adults, and we drink, within limits. And it was just, frankly, it was a bit of a bummer. And I think that, especially in these times, that particular restaurant would benefit from having the ability to sell alcohol. Being able to make some additional revenue with obviously not having the same amount of capacity in their restaurant that they would have in pre-COVID times. And I could easily think of a number of our member businesses that would want to take advantage of that same situation.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. I'll leave it there. Thank you for being here.
Great. Thanks, Councillor
You're
Bly.
welcome.
And Councillor Fry, go ahead.
Chair, I'm wondering if you could reset my timer. It seems to be.
Yes, you bet.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Gauthier. Thanks for waiting up for us here. Well, first off, I want to thank you for speaking, and also for your support of the ideas of some plazas in this sort of DVBIA jurisdiction. Am I reading it right that the DVBIA might even be interested in helping to facilitate some of these pilots?
We'd be interested. I mean, we're already exploring adding additional seating to the front plaza of the Vancouver Art Gallery with city staff. I would say that we're making great progress, hoping to get an answer potentially by the end of this week to do that. And again, I would see that as a great example where what if someone was doing takeout and getting alcohol provided with that? They have a choice of either going home if they were being responsible, but what if they had the option to be able to do that on the front plaza of the Vancouver Art Gallery? So yeah. I just think that, I know we tend to err on the side of, let's prevent everyone from doing this because we have a few individuals that can act responsibly. I would like us to get beyond that to try this, do it as a pilot. If it doesn't work, we could cancel it or we can tweak it. But going back to your question, I have limited time here. Yes, we'd be interested in exploring options and working together with the city to do this.
Well, it's fantastic, and I because I know you're downtown and you're on the ground there, and I'm reflecting on one of the comments that Dr. Daly had made earlier about comparing British Columbia to Quebec, and that you can't change culture overnight, and the rates of binge drinking, like there's more access to alcohol in Quebec, yet less binge drinking. And I can't help but think, on the idea of changing culture overnight, that here we are having successfully averted this pandemic fundamentally by changing our culture overnight. And I'm wondering if you're seeing how culture has changed in downtown Vancouver, and are people acting differently, and is there a different sense since COVID?
Yeah, I think a lot of things have changed. Certainly, how when people are trying to avoid bumping into each other because they think they might have the virus. I'm hoping that we can learn a lot as a result of this pandemic, and I also like to look at it as an opportunity to try different things. And I think that that's what a number of motions that are on the table today that I've spoken to are trying to do is, why don't we try it, and, why don't we tweak it as required? But, I don't think that we're all, I'd like to think that we're responsible enough that we should be able to try this and give it a shot, because I think that more to Councillor Bly's motion, it's also a lifeline to a number of businesses that having the ability to sell alcohol and add to their bottom line might make the difference between keeping their doors open or being closed.
Thanks,
And
Mr. Gauthier.
Yep, that is for your time. But more questions, Mr. Gauthier. Councillor DiGenova, go ahead.
Thanks so much. I'm starting with a piece of trivia. Mr. Gauthier, it's late at night, but do you happen to know what the definition of a piazza is?
Well, I'm not going to try to outguess or provide a definition
square,
that an Italian could do.
Yes, but does this sound correct? A public square or marketplace in an Italian town, so of Italian origin. Now, we've talked about the piazzas before, and in introducing this, I appreciate Councillor Fry specifying that this was not necessarily that this would be in the queue, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I had looked at a pilot for and it didn't say it was in Little Italy. And I know you and I talked about this. It said, to celebrate Italian Heritage Month. I know we're maybe a little late. I don't know that that's going to quite happen here. We're days away from that. But it didn't have to be on Commercial Drive or, on the east side. And, wondering if you think starting with a pilot, like one pilot, just to see how one does, and maybe that space would be the right space. Is that something that you'd consider? And I don't know. I'm not suggesting I'm going to make an amendment. If I was going to do that, I'd maybe try and talk to Councillor Fry and Councillor Weeb about it. But do you think a pilot might help to alleviate that stress if we started with just one and kind of measured the results and, move forward, and then could move forward with others as per this motion?
Well, I'll be very diplomatic in my response. I think that the neighborhoods are all different, and I think that there might be some merit in doing one in the central business district on the front plaza of the Vancouver Art Gallery as an example. But I think there's some merit in trying some other places too. And I think it's good to run them parallel to see, what the response is. Because certainly in the
considering
CBD,
the staffing restraints though that we have right now, sorry, my time's limited, but considering the staffing restraints we have and the fact that I know the DVBIA, there's many things they're supportive of, the patios expediting, our staff are phenomenal. They run circles around what I could imagine a workload to be of one person. And they do the work of several people, each of them. But would you say if we had to have a little bit of everything, expediting patios and getting that out there as we've done, and, starting with one piazza, maybe it's a central place where people gather the most, which could, be seen to be I'm not sure. I don't want to presuppose what staff would do, but downtown.
Yeah, I think I would still lean towards trying a few.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
That's great. Thanks, Councillor DiGenova. And that is your questions. Mr. Gauthier, thank you so much for your patience and your good work out there and your contributions to our decision making through coming to speak to us, including so late at night.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you very much for the time.
Great. Okay. So next on our list and the final speaker is Mark Schutzbank.
Mark, are you there?
He must have hit us something because as I unmuted him, his line dropped. So he's going to have to call back.
Chair Carr, we don't have the speaker on the line, so maybe give him a minute to call back.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea since he was on the line and has waited this long. I think we should have the patience to see if he will call back.
He's back. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, you can go ahead, Mark.
Okay, thanks. Hey, sorry everybody, the joys of your computer dying. Even at 10 o'clock at the computer to dock into democracy. Just really grateful for everyone's time on that. I just had a few key points in speaking to this motion and in general to the motions that have been before. My name is Mark Schutzbank, and I'm speaking as a member of the Vancouver Food Policy Council. As we've not had a meeting, I'm not able to speak on behalf of that body. But the 3 points that I wanted to bring up was the first is we'd love the discussion around grocery licensing in addition to the alcohol licensing for small businesses. The reality on the ground is that many small businesses are actually already providing grocery services to patrons from a restaurant, and it's not included in that business license, and so technically they are in violation of their bylaw, of their business license, and that's already happening across the city. Restaurants are providing groceries, both which is a boon for a small farming community, but also for patrons who are then able to continue to support those restaurants through that work. And the second piece that I wanted to bring up is just in discussion with other Vancouver Food Policy Council members and to explore just the referral to staff for a measured approach, as the previous speakers have spoken to, both for and against this motion, and the number of motions is to just in the motions there's a referral to staff to think critically about how to do this work and to do it in a measured and smart approach. And just want to remind, just wanted to bring that up as another key part of this discussion as we try to help create a financial benefit to small establishments. Alcohol, of course, is one of those key pieces, and the reality on the ground, if you've been to a beach in Vancouver or recently or in the past, you know that people are already bringing alcohol to those beaches. And so how can we accrue that financial benefit to these small establishments which may not be able to weather the financial impact of this crisis and have a small chance of being able to stay through this crisis? Once we lose them, we will probably not be able to gain them back. And so how do we maintain the diversity of food services in this city and the culture of this city that's so dependent upon those food services? And the last point I just wanted to make is around the existing authority of enforcement for existing bylaws that allow for disorderly conduct, and the existing concerns that have been brought up is how do we use those effectively and to be able to support effective enforcement of those. And so what are the the financial considerations to be able to do that and to just be able to think critically around that, as I'm sure staff will do. And that's all I had to say. Thank you so much for the time and for your energy on these matters.
Great. Thank you so much for for staying so long on the line and speaking with us. You do have questions, though. So, Councillor Kirby-Young, go ahead.
Hi there. I'll be quick. Thanks so much for speaking. I just want to clarify because I heard you say a couple different things, and I just want to get it straight. You talked about the importance of helping the small businesses survive, but then you also mentioned the part of the motion that's currently on the agenda about referring to staff for a measured approach. So just clarifying, do you favor a more measured approach, or do you favor just open it up to everybody and move forward right away? I wasn't super clear based on your comments. I just wanted to get some clarity on that.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that staff will have a better sense of being able to say, okay, well, we'll open this many, and there's a discussion around the amount of licensing that would be available. And there's some other discussion around kind of like the technical aspects of doing that. And so really to rely on staff to be able to bring that back to council for that piece. I think generally doing it as quickly as possible is going to be the best way here to be able to have an economic impact. But I know that council also needs to weigh the various pieces that are part of it. From an economic standpoint, opening it up now for a temporary period would be the best measure for those small businesses, and so want to support those small businesses first and foremost.
Okay, so fair to say you're looking for a balance of, reasonable kind of speed, but also some smart policy. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, thank you for creating such poetry from those words.
No problem. I'm sorry we don't have carrots in person today. Thanks for being here.
Welcome.
Great. Okay. Well, indeed. Thank you so much, Mr. Schutzbank, for saying those are your questions. Again, so appreciate your patience with the process, and especially calling back in so promptly when your line dropped. So thank you. And Council, that does take us to the end of the agenda that we have that we've agreed to continue with tonight, reminding you that we have moved to refer debate and decision to June 2nd and all the rest of the items on this agenda to June 2nd. So at this point, I am looking to adjourn this meeting.
No, Council Carr, recess.
Yeah. Oh, just recess. Oh, you mean this meeting is going to continue? Is this meeting?
My apologies. Yes, we
2nd?
referred. Yeah, you're right. Motion to adjourn.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move, Councillor Bly.
That's great.
Chair Carr?
Yes.
Sorry, it is recess because we have speakers for the other items. It's just the decision debate that we referred to standing committee. So all the items are going to continue in standing committee on June 2nd.
Oh, okay. So I'll be in a chair on that. Oh, okay. So again, to reverse, it is a motion to recess.
To recess, Councillor Bly.
To June 2nd. Thank you, Councillor Bly. And those just in favor, just say aye.
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 Yeah. Those opposed, say nay. Great. And we will now convene in council. Over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Chair Carr, we don't need to do that. We've already reconvened earlier, so we will reconvene the council portion once standing committee is done next Tuesday. Good night, council.
We didn't make any decisions between then and
Good
now.
night.
You're right.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay. Yep. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.